Okay, good morning. Today is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, and this is the regular meeting of the Kings County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Neves.
Here.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Verboon.
Here.
Craig Peterson.
Here.
Richard Fagundes.
Okay, all 5 members are present. We are ready to conduct business today. We'll start off with the invocation by Arthur Fox, New Hope Orthodox Presbyterian Church. Would you all please rise? Arthur, are you available?
You hear me?
Yep, we hear you now.
Okay, let us pray together. And merciful God, we come to you this morning as an afflicted people. In your infinite wisdom, you have sent upon us for these 6 months of plague, the coronavirus, to call us to turn to you in prayer and to seek your pardon and your help. And you give us every encouragement to do so in your word. O Lord God Almighty, you are sovereign and just as well as merciful. Our nation has sinned against you for so long, condoning the murder of unborn children, seeking to fulfill our own desires in every possible way, ignoring the helpless and rejecting appeals from you to repent of our sins. We've become a nation of self-worshipers and hateful in our treatment of others, and our land is filled with violence. We have forgotten that we are sinners, and we have sought to behave as though we ourselves are God and you are not. There is, in short, not one of your 10 holy commandments that we as a nation have not broken without remorse as a nation. And so you are justly angry with us, and we deserve nothing but your wrath as a nation. We confess we deserve our afflictions, for we have not turned to you as a nation to seek your pardon, but rather we have sought to solve our own problems in our own way. And we have sought to ignore you, and we have thought perhaps you would leave us alone. So, Lord, it is with shame that we come to you now to confess these sins and worse. We simply have not made the time nor the effort, nor come to remember all the details of our sins in order to confess each one. Yet you, who are all-knowing, do know our guilt, and you know our hearts. And we are thankful that you are very merciful. You sent your Son to become man and live a life of 33 years of sinless service and obedience to you on behalf of sinners. And you called us to hear the good news, that if we will confess and repent of our sins, you will hear from heaven and forgive us. And thus we turn now in grief and helplessness to beg you for mercy. Hear our cry, O Lord, and give each one of us repentant and sorrowful hearts for our sins. And please forgive our nation and bring her to repentance. And then in your mercy, heal our land and heal us of the violence and all the harm done by our sin, and lift your heavy hand of just and righteous judgment against us, and remove from our midst this pandemic and all the vile and violent effects it has had upon us in our hearts, in our minds, and our bodies. Now, our dear Lord, we thank you for these public servants who are gathered together today to serve you in our community. And as they do gather to do that, we beg you to give them wisdom to know what they must do to help and serve us. We thank you for each one. We ask that you give them a fresh fear of your person and your name, and teach them and help them to be faithful. Help them to agree on the proper course of action to move Hanford or Kings County forward into the future. Give them clear minds and wise hearts and compassion. And, O Lord, thank you for their service and for the gift each of them is to our community. Bless and protect them, and keep them from needless disagreement, and help them to know what must be done. Dear God, we pray the same things for our governor, our assembly and senate on a state level, and all of the officers of the county and the other counties in our state. And please, dear God, take away your judgment from our community and revive your church and give us faith and trust in you both now and in the future. And we ask this of you, knowing that you are both just and wise, compassionate, and willing to help those who come to ask for your help. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. This time I'd like to ask our Public Health Director, Ed Hill, to lead us in the flag salute.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, we'll move on now to unscheduled appearances. Any person may directly address the board at this time on any item on the agenda or any other items of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. 2 minutes are allowed. So Melanie, do we have anybody online? Flint, you online this morning? Somebody's talking right there. Hang on, we're trying to unmute you. We see you, but we can't hear you, Billy. Yeah. Hang on. You're not on mute on our end, so you have to check your end. Yeah, we don't hear you. Yeah, you have to call it in, Billy. Yeah, I can't read lips.
Okay. Hang on a second.
There you go.
There it is.
You're in.
All right.
Okay. All right. There you go. Because my help ran in here. So, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bill Lance, Kings County Fire Department. I want to give you a quick update on your fire department and where we're at today. Currently, we have 18 personnel and 7 units operating at the Creek Fire, which is in Fresno County, the Sierra National Forest. Currently, it's burned in excess of about 220,000 acres and threatened the communities of Huntington Lake, Shaver Lake, and Auberry. That fire is 16% contained. We have 7 personnel and 3 units operating at the Alpha Fire, which is in Tulare County, Sierra National Forest. It's burned in excess of 107,000 acres, and it's only 12% contained. And we have 1 single resource operating from the team up at the Shasta Trinity National Forest at the Elkhorn Fire, which is 30% contained. It's burned almost 800,000 acres. And your dozer is currently on local attack assignment in Fresno County, as it is the only dozer available in Fresno County right now. So it is on our contract we have with Fresno County and staying there so it can provide service to both Fresno and Kings County. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. We got about 30 people out. We do have full staffing each day, 52 back in the county. So we do have a reliable suppression force in the county. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, comments? So, Chief, how many dozers do you think are on the fire up at the Big Creek or the Creek Fire?
Probably everything Fresno County has, which I believe is about 7. And they probably have contract dozers up there also. So they're spreading their resources thin for Fresno Tulare County because they've got so many things going in both those counties and statewide. So there's fires they haven't even made an attack on yet, but they probably brought in at least 7 dozers, several helicopters. A lot of them are contract.
Very good. All right. So appreciate your comments and appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Chair, according to the CAL FIRE site, they have 76 dozers
76 dozers.
and 66 water tenders with 281 engines and 18 helicopters. So there's a tremendous amount of resources in that region.
Okay. Thank you. So, Melanie, we have anybody else on the line? Did you want to see if anybody else wanted to present?
Phil, I believe we're ready for the behavioral health presentation.
Okay, Melanie, can you hear me? I want to confirm that you can hear me before I proceed.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good morning, Chair and Board. My name is Phil Leonos, and I'm representing Behavioral Health and the Kings County Mental Health Task Force this morning. We are officially requesting that the Board adopt a resolution declaring the month of September as Suicide Prevention Month in Kings County. Regarding a fiscal impact, there's no additional cost to the general fund. All revenues and expenditures for suicide prevention awareness and prevention activities are in the MHSA budget under budget unit number 422200. And I'm going to proceed with some background information. Suicide continues to be a preventable public health and mental health issue that impacts many lives and communities across our nation. In order to increase public awareness of suicide prevention, Behavioral Health, in collaboration with the Kings County Mental Health Task Force, are dedicating this month of September to Suicide Prevention Month. Suicide Prevention Awareness Month provides a dedicated time to come together with collective passion and strength around a very difficult topic. Each year, the National Lifeline and other mental health organizations and individuals across the country raise awareness of suicide prevention during September. A few things that we are doing in collaboration with our mental health task force providers are as follows. We're disseminating resources to local stakeholders and community-based organizations, providing the National Lifeline number and Central Valley Suicide Prevention Hotline number, and the Kingsview Warm Line on pinwheels placed at local businesses. We've expanded our radio marketing to specific target groups and high-risk demographics. We went from a quarterly basis to year-round in both English and now Spanish. We're collaborating with Adventist Health to promote prevention efforts within their extensive network of providers and consumers. We're promoting regional and national suicide prevention trainings to our local schools and community members. We're continuing to service our community via the LOSS team and provide critical counseling to individuals, survivors of suicide, family members, and friends. We're continuing our DRAW program. In addition to that, on September the 8th, we provided a suicide prevention awareness training to our local Veteran Services Department that interface the advocates and liaisons with our veterans community. And on September 23rd coming up, we're having an outreach event at Reese Sunset Middle School, handing out 60 suicide prevention awareness kits. Partnering with Kingsview on this project, and we look forward to it. So we are requesting that the board adopt this resolution declaring the month of September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Kings County, please.
Thank you very much. And we have you on the consent calendar, so we appreciate you making your presentation before that. And at this time, I'll accept any motion to approve the consent calendar as presented after we pull item number B4.
Move to adopt the consent calendar as amended. Thank you very much.
Moved by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Fagundes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes. Okay, we've approved the consent calendar as amended, 5 in favor. And we'll move on now to regular agenda items. And we're going to go right to elections with Lupe Villa. Morning, Lupe, you on the line? Morning, Lupe. Can you hear me? We can't hear you if you're talking. Check your mute button. We're experiencing some technical difficulties this morning. Yeah, you're unmuted, Lupe, so it's up to you. So we need to go and start reading it into the agenda. So Elections Department, Lupe Villa, so we're going to consider approving the First Amendment to the Dominion Voting System and Service Agreement between Kings County and Dominion Voting System Incorporated. Consider approving the registration agreement with Runbeck Election Services, NCC Group, Escrow Associates, LLC, and the California Secretary of State to provide escrow protection for the election management systems. Also consider approving the Help America Vote Act, federal funding provided by California Secretary of State under Agreement 20G26116 in the amount of $209,180, and approving the budget change with 4/5 vote required. Any comments or questions? Moved by Supervisor Fagundes, second by Supervisor Neves. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. We have approved the elections agenda item as presented.
Lupe, you did a good job.
Yeah, thanks, Lupe. Appreciate the hard work and effort. Let's hope our technology works better on election day. We'll move on now to information technology, John Devlin. And we can see John because he's here in the back of the room. Morning, John.
Where you have on 11th for board staff places. Property assessment and U.S. Bank staff amount for tax collectors. Assessor values of the property. No cost, system.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, myself and the public, can we see if his mic's on? I can't hear him.
He's checking.
Gonna call IT? No on switch?
No.
Oh, he's got help. Reinforcements.
Yeah, just come up here to the front.
No, it's not working. Change the batteries. Yeah.
IT, we're working on it all the time.
That was a previous item.
That was long distance.
Come on,
John,
John, go ahead and start
you
over
have
again.
cleaning wipes after you're finished. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll just start all over again. Good morning. Before you, we have an agreement with Megabyte Systems for the county's property assessment and tax system. On August 11th, your board directed staff to enter into an agreement with Megabyte Systems for a property assessment and tax system. Working with Megabyte and County Council, staff is now before you with said agreement and the maintenance agreement which goes with it. The county tax collector's office collects over 110 million in property taxes each year that is distributed to 64 taxing jurisdictions, while the assessor values over 12.5 billion in property annually. The future known cost of the Megabyte property tax system over the next 12 years is $4.678 million. First year cost of $401,800 has been included in the fiscal year 2021 final proposed budget in budget unit 121600. The amount includes our first year payment of $256,800 for the actual software license, plus the $145,000 capped cost of converting our data into the Megabyte system. The 12-year cost of $4.678 million assumes a 2.5% increase in annual maintenance fees based on a CPI index. However, that's actually lower than 2.5 right now, so it might be slightly less, but just to get a figure that we can publish and live with. The agreement spells out an initial down payment of 30%. And then the remaining 70% is split into 5 annual payments of 14% each. This is an interest-free loan for the purchase of the system. The last payment for the software will be due on June 1st, 2025. After this, we are under an annual maintenance agreement, which we can terminate with 60 days written notice. The slide you see before you explains all the costs and shows the initial payment, and then all the annual payments are on the bottom right there, that last column. The agreement has been vetted by County Council and is approved as to form, with the exception of section 8.3.4, called the passage of time, which is on page 6 of the software license agreement. You go to the next slide. And this slide explains County Council's objection. This is verbatim from Carrie Woolley, Assistant County Council. The one section that is a problem is section 8.3.4 of the license agreement. This section shortens our statute of limitations for bringing any sort of claim or action for a breach of this contract or a problem with the software to 1 year from the date of occurrence. Not the date we find out it occurred, the actual date it occurred. The statute of limitations for actions arising out of contracts is 4 years, which is obviously considerably more than 1 year. In addition, there's a legal doctrine called relate back that you can take advantage of in certain circumstances to extend a statute of limitations to start from when you discovered a defect or problem, not from when the problem occurred. Section 8.3.4 would waive the county's right to both the 4-year statute of limitations and any attempt to use the relate back doctrine. Instead, we would be stuck with an unforgiving 1-year period to not only discover the problem, but bring a claim about it. That's not acceptable, and the section needs to be stricken. Other than section 8.3.4 of the license agreement, everything else looks good. So I brought this to Megabyte's attention. I asked them to strike that clause. They said nobody else has ever asked them for that. Not to take them at their word. And their counsel came back and said, well, we could meet you halfway, well, partway. We'll give you a 2-year term. The document in front of you is the old contract that says 1 year. The only thing that's changed from the one that we're asking you to sign says 2 years, and we're waiting for that to come back signed because that just happened Friday afternoon late. So we asked them to take it. They refused, but did capitulate and gave us 2 years rather than 1. Assessor, finance, and IT all feel that with the tax cycle being on a 1-year timetable, that we should hopefully catch any problems large enough to warrant a claim or action. We also have the strength of 38 other counties who use the exact same program that would also be looking for any abnormalities in the software package. So we feel that this was a good compromise and that we should move forward. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Brad Peterson.
I know we're approving this contract today, and this doesn't pertain exactly to it, but I've expressed my concerns about the limitation on storage with this. I know we've talked about that we have converted storage or data, previous data. I just want to know who's going to be dedicated, what it's going to cost to be able to retrieve very important
Historical
data, and how long will it take to achieve that if someone comes in and requests, or if there's a transaction?
What we have, I found out that we do have all the old data already converted, part of that conversion process for the previous package we were looking at. We have all of our historical data already converted into a SQL database. And it doesn't cost anything other than just the storage to put it on. All we have to do is build a small front end so that somebody can just look at it and pull it up, and it's really a quick, dirty project. And that way you can just put in the parameters you're looking for, and it'll give you that data. It may give you several pages that you have to kind of look at and put together, but it'll give you all that historical data related to a particular property. it give you the history of when properties have been split and sub-split. So if you have an older parcel number, it'll give you any of that historical data related to that or an owner or a company. So you can look all the way back of all the data we had.
So, and when do you envision that being completed?
Right now, they're busy doing a bunch of work for other departments, but then we'll get onto this. I don't think I'm pretty sure we can have that done before we even start this project. It's not that big of a deal. And if not, then some programmer can just take your query, put it in manually and get you the data. So, they can script that pretty quickly.
Okay. I appreciate that. I just, historical land purchases and transfers are, key to ownership and land and value for people in the county. And so I want to make sure we have that covered and done up front so that it's accessible when the transition occurs. So thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any more questions? Okay, either this is where we need to.
Mr. Chair, this is a new software program, and the state of California is always messing with the tax code. I do kind of agree that the 2-year, is a good time frame to do, because I think, and I didn't see anything in the contract where it talks about any changes to the future, like the Prop 15 or Prop 19 that's on the ballot. And I don't even know if Megabyte's going to even, take on the responsibility to update and be able to meet the needs of the 38 counties that it works with today. I agree with the 2-year contract, but I'm still have a little bit of concern in the updating process. And so I don't know if we should make that part of the contract or just leave it status quo. And I'm looking at county council just to see,
Yeah. My understanding is it's not part of the maintenance agreement.
Correct.
And that legal changes would be upgrades and updates to the system and would be as expensive as necessary, would be separately negotiated as necessary to incorporate whatever complexity the changes in law and regulation would be. But that certainly is a legitimate concern. With respect to the statute of limitations, of course, the worst case scenario is that you come in to discover that there is a consistent problem in the recordings, 19, 20 months in, and the way it's written is that you can't, the statute doesn't start running upon discovery. It goes back to the day they made the error. And so I just want to be sure that the board appreciates the risk of cutting it short, 2 years on the statutory. You're in essence waiving your statutory protections. But that is certainly within your authority to decide whether you're willing to assume that risk.
Yeah, because all the updates, every time you update, you run the risk of fouling up a, what do you call it, a micro? And so I have some concerns, but the roll is balanced annually, and it should be caught. The only bad part is that outside deal, as soon as you close the roll and then all of a sudden you do an update, all of a sudden that, you may not catch it for the next 14, 15 months. So I'm comfortable with the 24-month extension, but we are going to have to watch it fairly close, especially with the anytime they do an upgrade or anytime they send you an upgrade or a patch, because I just found some software programs that sometimes that patch fixes one problem and creates 3 others. And so I'd be concerned, and I don't know how much work is it, John, to go through that database to make sure that we're not messing up something else.
Well, they do testing. They do a development system, so you can run it in parallel with your main system. You basically just start another database and put the patch on that so you can run it and try it. They do extensive testing themselves, and they usually do it with one county. I'm pretty sure they probably pick a county with more IT people than we have to try that on. and then they make sure that it works before they start publishing it out.
And so you feel comfortable in that process?
Yes, and I did run into you this morning walking into to work here, and so I did pointedly ask Nick about that. I didn't remember where you heard that call.
Yeah, State Controller's Office meeting last Friday.
Okay, but I did ask him pointedly, if these tax like split roll, et cetera, come down the pike, do you change it for us, or are you just not going to? So as soon as I find out, I can let you know too.
Yeah, and again, we're not going to be the only county in that boat, and I can kind of see not working on it now, and the legislation is somewhat vague as far as, is it calendar year or fiscal year? And so it's kind of difficult to try to determine, but I think we just need to be aware that should the voters pass Prop 15 and Prop 19, it may create another set of issues. It doesn't mean that we can't run something special on a different spreadsheet like
some of the other financial stuff, but they may not support any changes in the future. But the legislature and between the legislature and the voters, they're always changing the tax bills anyway. So it was, and you can't worry about every change, because the change is going to happen. We're going to have to adopt, either way. So, 2-year extension. Go ahead and move for approval. Motion by the 2-year extension. Second by. Second. Good question. What a question. One, not to belabor the point, but one of the things that just kind of popped in my head is with respect to those files that we will generate. Yeah, here. Richard.
I don't know if you can hear me, Mr. Chair, but we can't hear you. And for some reason.
Oh, there you're back.
Even when Steve Peterson are speaking, the camera's not coming up on you gentlemen.
Yeah, no, we're not moving the camera.
No, it's not even a visual, sir. It's just all me and the public see is the initials MC from Melanie Curtis. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, back up. The other thing, and this may be an administrative question as well, but for historical data, are we going to charge, is this something that's going to be charged for to acquire information about historical parcel data? Or is that something that we're going to provide on request? Or is it something that, in the traditional sense would be, just an easy acquisition?
I refer to the assessor's office on that. We do updates on our master fee schedule, but I would defer the question to the assessor's office.
And in the past, you haven't had to pay for the information, but you had to pay for the paper and the staff time to research it and pull it out.
Yeah, for maps or whatever.
Yeah. But so it'll be somewhat minimal.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we just don't get charged. We're not charging people for a bunch of, a high fee for information, that they should have access to.
And in the past, I think we've allowed them, if they will want it in a digital format, it's a different.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what the assessor does now.
I see Christy there.
I can address the question if you'd like. So if I understand, I didn't catch the beginning of the question. You're just wondering about the fees as far as how much the charges will be for accessing information. Is that correct?
Well, as if we if we transfer the information, typical information to Megabyte, but now we have to go into the system to search for historical data that Megabyte won't hold due to file limitations. Just want to clarify that that's not going to be an issue or an exorbitant cost to acquire that kind of information.
It shouldn't really change the cost because the searches are actually usually done on the clerk recorder side as far as documents. deeds, transfers, things like that. So all that data goes back forever, back to the early 1900s or the late 1800s, actually. So through the clerk recorder side, a lot of things can still be searched the way they've always been searched. And on the assessor side, we also have paper documents, which is an agenda item this morning that I'll bring to you in a little while that we're hoping to convert.
Very good. Well, thank you. And if there's no other questions, then I would call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Neves with an amendment to the 2-year contract and a second by Supervisor Peterson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. We have approved as discussed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, we're going to go at item number C, and that would be Public Works Department, Kevin McAllister.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. You sound great.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate the compliment. This project goes back to 1999. That's the year that the United States Corps of Engineers completed a feasibility study on raising the spillways at Lake Success. Subsequent to that, JPA was formed between Kings County, Tulare County, the Tulare Lake Basin Water Storage District, the city of Porterville, and the Lower Tule River Irrigation District. It serves as a lead agency, and this JPA is referred to in other documents and in the staff report as the non-federal sponsor. Since the formation of that JPA, significant progress has been made, but there have also been numerous delays on this project. Most notably, the Division of Safety of Dams had some concern about structural liquefaction at the base of the dam, and that held the project up for many, many years. Subsequently, a second JPA was formed to push the project along, and we were able to convince the Dam Safety Oversight Group of the error of their ways, and the project got back on track. This project is within the district of House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Due to his efforts, he was able to get almost all of the costs normally paid by the non-federal sponsors to be covered by the Corps of Engineers. As your board may recall from yesterday, there is some $40,000 in capital projects to cover some local share costs that aren't covered by the change in the legislation. Work on this project is anticipated to start in September of 2021 and be completed in 2022. Now, even though the costs will be covered by the Corps of Engineers, it's not unheard of for the money put up by the local agencies to have to wait for a year or more to be reimbursed by the feds. In order to mitigate cash flow impacts on the non-federal sponsors, the Lower Tule River Irrigation District has negotiated a bridge loan package with the County of Tulare. Attached to your agenda item is a letter memorandum and a promissory note detailing the terms and conditions of the loan. The Lower Tule River Irrigation Board, acting as the lead agency of the JPA, will be approving the loan as part of their lead agency authority under the terms and conditions of the JPA. Lower Tule River Irrigation District, however, is requesting each JPA member to support this action as a belts and suspenders, and that's Mr. Vink's phrase. I'll let him explain that. As a belts and suspenders step, given the size of the loan. The lead agency did not want to execute a loan on behalf of the other JPA members without notification and given an opportunity to support that action. Mr. Vink is the former general manager of the Lower Tule River Irrigation District and principal from 633 Solutions, and he is present, he is online, and he will provide a project update for your board. At the conclusion of Mr. Vink's presentation, we would be happy to answer any questions you may have, and then we would ask your board to authorize county support for the proposed bridge loan from Tulare County to the Lower Tule River Irrigation District and approve the letter memorandum agreeing that the proposed bridge loan negotiated by the Lower Tule River Irrigation District with Tulare County is an action necessary for the completion of the Success Reservoir Enlargement Project. And at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Vink.
Thank you, Kevin.
Just a quick sound check. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Board of Supervisors and staff, thank you for the opportunity to comment today and provide any information we can on this project. Just to hit some of the points that Kevin touched on, the project is actually under construction at present, We started construction in September 1 of this year with the first phase, which is the widening of the spillway, moving the right abutment of the spillway about 100 feet to the north. There's a fair amount of work going on there at present, and that we expect to continue through September of 2021, at which point we'll start phase 2 of construction, which is the actual construction of the spillway. For the County of Kings, this is primarily a flood control prevention project, with most of the impact occurring in Tulare County. So when we look at the percentages of cost sharing, the County of Kings is actually a fairly small percentage of it, but looking at the floodplain maps, there was some impacts, and particularly in the Tulare Lake bed and portions of Kings County. So I think overall, Kings County share of the project costs is about 3%. Now, at one point, this project was going to be cost shared with the local agencies, including the County of Kings, County of Tulare, City of Porterville, Tulare Lake Basin, and a number of the water agencies. With the passage of the Bipartisan Budget Act at the federal level in 2018, all of the costs were shifted to the federal government. So at present, we have $135.5 million allocated in federal dollars to this project. So provided we stay under that amount, all of the costs will be picked up by the federal government. That said, the non-federal sponsor, which in this case is the 5 agencies that I just mentioned, represented by Lower Tule River Irrigation District, who is the lead agency, is responsible to do the LAIRD's work, the lands, easements, relocations, right-of-ways, and demolitions work for the project. So the Corps of Engineers, under agreement, has requested that we do the LAIRD's work, which is largely the acquisition of the property around the lake necessary to accommodate the enlarged reservoir. We anticipate those costs to be about $8 to $10 million, and like Kevin said, all of that money should be reimbursed by the Corps of Engineers, but the outlay by the local agencies is going to occur in advance of the reimbursement by the Corps. So rather than continuing to do a back and forth with the 5 agencies on cash flow for those LAIRD's activities and for the property acquisition, the group decided that they would approach Tulare County, who has a bridge loan program set up, and we would do the bridge loan. The total of the loan is for up to $3.5 million, with the last $1 million an option on whether Lower Tule needs to call on it or not. I think the total cost of the loan over the 2 to 3 year period is about $50,000. So that's going to be spread out amongst the 5 agencies, as I've described earlier. So appreciate the time and happy to answer any questions. But like Kevin said, this is really just a cash flow issue. It's not necessarily taking dollars from the counties to fund this activity.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments or the explanation. So any question or comments for Mr. Meek? Nothing? Anything else? Do I have a motion?
So move it, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Kevin here with his retirement coming up. I think we just need to acknowledge that we're going to lose a wealth of years of knowledge that Kevin has on these waterways, especially east of Kings County. I've sat on a committee with him, so I've been there for a few of these meetings in Tulare County, and I'm just very impressed by how Kevin is able to have these discussions that are beyond me personally, and I sure hope that when he leaves, which is shortly, we have somebody there to backfill this institutional knowledge and what he brings to the county. So I just want to thank him, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Supervisor Neves to be approved as presented. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Peterson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes.
Okay, 5 members have voted in favor, and we'll move on now to the assessor's office. Christy Lee.
Mr. Chair, before you move on to the assessor's office, I would like to correct the record regarding item 4B, the IT contract. Supervisor Neves specifically asked and inquired about subsequent legal changes and whether the contract provided for those. I mistakenly represented to the board that the maintenance agreement did not cover those, that those would have to be separately negotiated. I've been informed that I was wrong, and that in fact the maintenance agreement does require them, consistent with the payments under the maintenance agreement, to upgrade and update the system with respect to any legal changes that occur during the term of that agreement.
Very good. And
Still-
she admitted she was wrong in public.
Yeah. Still doesn't change the motion.
No, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on now to Assessor's Office, Christy Lee.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Christy Lee, Assessor, Clerk Recorder. I'd really like to thank your board and Rebecca for allowing me to present this item because I think it's very important for the county as a whole. Due to the increasing reliance on documents in an electronic format, it has become necessary for the assessor's office to convert paper property files into searchable electronic images. In the wake of COVID-19, this has become even more prevalent in order to allow staff to serve the public in ways that currently require in-person visits. It is requested to enter into a competitively bid contract with Omnia Partners, which was formerly known as U.S. Communities, for a joint request for proposal due to timing constraints. Okay.
All your sound. It's on the side. It's on your side. Have you bumped your button?
My side?
Technology is not working in our favor today.
Not us. Not us. This time it's not us.
Well, Chrissy, you do, I mean, I can see you. Do you have, how much more of a presentation do you have to make? 5 minutes, 1 minute? Or are you about that?
It's probably 1 to 2 minutes. Can you hear me?
Okay, well, Rebecca's gonna fill in.
So this is one of the items that was,
through all the challenges that our departments were having because of the coronavirus 2019. This was an area that was very challenging in the assessor's office. Trying to mitigate persons coming into the office and keeping the exposure level down. This was a project that could help assist with that. And so the Miss Assessor has gone out and she's navigated through the system to work through a U.S. Communities Omni contract, which was already competitively bid nationwide. And so it gives us the ability to move quickly. And this will allow Christie's team to go in and obtain those documents electronically instead of all the time that it takes to pull the documents manually, and it'll help Kings County into the future. So it's a project that is approximately $175,000, a one-time expense. Your board had adopted to use coronavirus relief funds for this project, and so the assessor would like to move forward. Hopefully I covered that correctly. A head shake, yes.
Yeah, and I worked on a little bit with Chrissy. I called early on. We were having some complaints in the realtor field that, people couldn't be present to sign wet signatures. And one title company was not allowing people in-person signatures. So we needed to step up and get on board with what the new rules are, or the new is in the world. So appreciate Chrissy bringing us forward. And if there's any question or comments.
The only question I have, Mr. Chair, is does the legal community accept digital formatted documents? At one time, they were not real active on digital formatted, and they wanted originals.
Several years ago, both the state and the federal government adopted electronic signature legislation that says so long as both parties agree to accept it as a legitimate signature, it is as legally binding as an original.
Okay. And that's part of this agreement as well?
It doesn't need to be stated into the agreement because it's law, but I don't know for sure if it's set out.
Oh, I think Christy was going to try.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, great. Okay, so this is a slightly different. This isn't the electronic signature portion.
Right.
This is the historical building records and things like that. It's almost a piece of the whole puzzle. The electronic signature is coming in the future. We're still working on that one. This is to have all the historical documents scanned and indexed.
Correct. And will they have legal status as being a certified document?
Yes.
Okay. Last like some of the more official documents, like birth certificates, death certificates, will they need to have some kind of a seal if it's some historical building or some historical site?
Well, the birth certificates, death certificates, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Those are through the clerk recorder's office, and those are not, you will need the original documents for that. That's a different thing. This is mainly for the building records, which are also confidential documents. But those are able to be released, without a paper format. In fact, many of the counties throughout the state have already converted all their documents because of fears of fire and flood, things like that, because we have no backup at this point.
Yeah, okay. With that clarification, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Moved by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Fagundes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. We've approved it as presented. Move on now to the health. Thank you, Christy. Move on now to the Health Department. And Nancy Gerking is going to be on the line.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is Nancy Gerking with the Kings County Health Department. I am here to present, and please bear with me on the title. It is the epidemiology and laboratory capacity for prevention and control of emerging infectious diseases, enhancing detection emerging issues project. And first, I would like to apologize that the grant documents, the backup, were not available when the agenda was published on Friday. We received an extension on the work and spend plan related to this item. They are due to the state on Friday, September 18th, and we're working right up to the final moments to get this item on the agenda. And we'll go on here. Within the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act of 2020, funds have been allocated to help mitigate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, epidemiology and laboratory capacity for prevention and control of emerging infectious diseases, also known as ELC, is awarding $10.25 billion to state, local, and territorial health departments under the Emerging Issues Project, also known as the ELC Enhancing Detection Supplement. On this $10.25 billion, the California Department of Public Health was allocated $499 million. The Kings County Department of Public Health has been awarded $2,972,456. These funds are intended to support a broad range of COVID-19 testing, surveillance, and response activities, including but not limited to expand laboratory testing capacity for COVID-19, including the ability to conduct tests and manage and use laboratory-related data. Testing will support diagnosis, contact tracing, and surveillance. Testing will encompass high-risk and underserved populations and will also include partnerships with public health, academic, commercial, and hospital laboratories, and community-based testing sites. The grant requires the test plan that shows how grantees will meet testing targets. It also will enhance epidemiological surveillance systems. These systems will support the COVID-19 response as well engage with local, community, academic, and other partners. The CDC encourages grantees to address local needs for COVID-19 response through this funding. To accomplish these goals, the health department will request to hire new staff, including a program manager, fiscal specialist, data analyst, lab assistant, medical billing clerk, health assistant, 3 health educators, 2 epidemiologists, and 2 infection prevention. These positions are required to implement the project and will phase out at the end of the project unless other funding is identified. Additionally, in the public health laboratory, we will be able to purchase new lab equipment, including an additional Cepheid engine expert and a BioFire torch system. Both of these machines will test, among other things, COVID-19. We'll also purchase a high-performance lab refrigerator to support sample protection and sustainability of samples, and to purchase new equipment to safeguard the health of our lab personnel. We'll also be able to purchase reagents and other medical supplies, and we'll be able to upgrade the laboratory's electrical system to provide sufficient, stable, and protected power to all instruments, even in conditions of outages, spikes, and surges. Collectively, the proposed activities build upon current investments and better prepare California to address COVID-19 response needs over the next 18 to 24 months, and allow the state to prioritize and support local health departments to target resources for those most vulnerable to the impact of the disease. Additionally, the expanded laboratory capacity and improvements to epidemiological surveillance system made possible with these funds will enhance the ability and capacity for the Department of Public Health to respond to future communicable disease outbreaks and accomplish its mission of promoting and protecting the health and well-being of Kings County residents through education, prevention, and intervention. It is the recommendation of the Kings County Department of Public Health that this board approve the ELC Enhanced Funding Project with the California Department of Public Health. And this agreement has been reviewed and approved by County Council. Are there any questions?
Any question or comments? Want to repeat it?
Move for adoption.
Moved by Supervisor Hess, second by Supervisor Fagundes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we have a comment, sorry. I didn't see my card. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I was calling out.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm trying to understand this. So, so currently, I believe we send our samples to Larry for testing. As I hear this presentation, is this saying that the County of Kings Public Health Department will be able to conduct tests among Kings County residents and then test on our county campus within our own lab? Is that what this is saying?
Nancy Durkee. Yes, it is Supervisor Valley. Currently, we are limited to 30 tests per day with the Tulare County lab, and this equipment will, in fact, allow us to do our own testing.
Okay, does that, if logistically, well, if mechanically we're able to do that, and thank you for answering the question, logistically, are we able to do that in spite of some of the other challenges that we're having with the lab in Tulare as it relates to the agents or any chemicals needed to test? Because as I've understand it, if I've been hearing right, since March, we could do all the testing that we want here in Kings County, and we send our samples to be tested. But even in Tulare, we're having problems with the backlog of them running our samples through their laboratory due to the lack of these agents or chemicals. How does that fit in this picture?
Currently, we've been told that the production is improving and should be available within the next 6 to 8 weeks, about the time that we should be getting the lab equipment. We will be able to get our results, and I'm being told that we have probably a 20-minute result, which is...
Okay, so your timeline to be up and ready to test in Kings County within our own laboratory is approximately 2 months before you can do that?
I'm going to go ahead and interject here. Supervisor Valley, through the chair, this is Ed Hill with Public Health. Just to add some additional points of clarification, the Gene Expert equipment we did order months ago when we received communicable disease funds, which are board approved. I don't remember the exact date, but it was right before the COVID event went really live. Because of that, that machine and equipment was put on back order, and all the equipment was prioritized to the hardest hit areas, i.e. New York and Washington. Since that time, those supplies are becoming more and more readily available. This would be a second piece of equipment. I'm still not that confident that the reagents and the equipment will be here in a timely fashion. So even though we're being told 6 to 8 weeks, I want to make sure that it's clear that that could be extended. In addition to that, we would need to upgrade, as Ms. Gerking pointed out, the electrical in the laboratory, which would take some time. So that would also extend the implementation of this process. So it's contingent on us being able to get the equipment, and then two, having the electrical upgraded within the lab to make sure that we can sustain that process.
I appreciate you being extremely honest and clear on that, Mr. Hill. What would be your best estimated timeline so for the public to know? I don't want anyone to walk away from this vote thinking that Kings County is up and running and testing out of our own laboratory today. Can you give us your best professional judgment call on that?
It'd be helpful if someone from Public Works may still be on the call to give me a timeline on upgrading the electricity and the breaker box in the lab. That would be one item. The other one, I can't be very confident on my projections, since again, they continue to back order this equipment and supplies. And then one thing that I also want to point out is what Ms. Gerking is talking about, and I will get back to a better answer for you, Supervisor Valley, that in strategy 2 through the ELC CARES Act, that's the laboratory portion, we were only given $500,000. So even if we are able to obtain the machines and the reagents, we will be limited on the capacity of the cartridges, which runs the samples to the tune of about 392. But we will continue to seek opportunities and ways to purchase that to sustain this process. But back to your original question, if I had to wager a guess, but I don't want to be pinned down to it because there's so many variables and so many things that can get in the way, I'd say 3 to 4 months probably.
Okay, so then, so we understand until then, our samples are continuing to be sent to a lab in Tulare?
That is correct. We have had, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. I guess the follow-up is, then if that's the case, and it sounds like it is, what's the timeline on them returning your samples, for them to turn around the results of your samples?
The timeline would remain the same. We've always had good experiences with Tulare getting results within 24 hours. At their busiest time, it has been delayed to 3 days. We did have discussions with them because of all of the testing requirements that I'm going to get into by the state on my regular update. They have allowed us to start sending 60 samples now and are no longer restricting us to only symptomatic individuals. And that's as those reagents come on or become more available. That lab has a little bit more capacity. They are limiting us right now to only Monday through Friday, though, no weekend samples. We can freeze those samples and ship them to them on Monday, but that would delay the results. But I just want to let you and the board know that Tulare has increased their capacity and has communicated that to us.
2 more questions, Mr. Chair, I promise. Well then, so then my follow-up question is then, you've received a lot of complaints, so have we as a board, that once there was a period where people would get tested and their results wouldn't get back to them for over 2 weeks. I thought we attributed that to the hold up at the lab in Tulare, and now you're saying that they've always turned around within 24 hours. Can you clarify?
Yes, great question. There's the Tulare Regional Lab, which is where Kings County Public Health sends their samples. All the other labs that are done through the Day Reporting Center, the state labs, the local labs use either Quest or LabCorp. That's a private lab company, and those are where those delays occur, not at the Tulare lab.
Thank you. Last question. So right now, this is all swab nose samples, right, Mr. Hill? And so assuming that's correct, where are we at as we move forward on COVID in a vision here as far as if you rewind time back to mid-March when this was hitting, you may recall that I spent approximately $600 of my own money and I bought some 20-minute rapid result COVID tests that I hand delivered to you. I understand they're still in your lab to the state. You haven't used them. Can you tell us where we're at technology-wise, FDA approval-wise, as if Kings County is actually going to, do you foresee us anytime soon as being able to use those kind of testing kits that I donated to you, sir, to the county health department on the public? And that's my last question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Supervisor Valley, to the chair. We will eventually get to that point. In fact, in the ELC CARES work plan, we are supposed to start evaluating the use of serology testing. Those are similar to the kits that you provided to us. Many of them were authorized under the emergency authorization through the FDA. Some of them are great for surveillance testing. Some of them, the jury is out on them on other aspects. There are new tests being developed and delivered every day. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the saliva test, the antigen test that's being done in the MBA. So there is technologies and advancements occurring every day. You're going to hear me say it multiple times today. This stuff continues to change minute by minute. So we hope to see that in the near future. And again, it's part of our requirements of the work plan to start researching the implementation of those processes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen?
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson?
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes?
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. We approve the item as presented. And Nancy, you got item 2A to consider too.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nancy Gerking, Public Health Committee. I'm here to present the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS COVID supplemental grant. Housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, the HOPL program, is a federally funded program and is designed to provide assistance in alleviating or preventing homelessness among persons with HIV/AIDS. The program provides funds to clients who qualify under the federal eligibility criteria for short-term housing, utilities, food, and transportation for medical appointments. This award is a supplemental funding provided under the CARES Act fiscal year 2020. The California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS is a fiscal agent responsible for the allocation and utilizing HOPL funds granted by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to ensure that HOPL goals and objectives are met. Goals of HOPL are to provide resources and strategies to alleviate or prevent homelessness among persons living with HIV/AIDS, and to ensure these households achieve and maintain housing stability and improve the access to HIV/AIDS care, treatment, and support. Department of Public Health has administered the HOPL program in Kings County since 1997. Public Health Department has screened clients for eligibility. If determined eligible, the clients are enrolled and an allocation of funds are distributed according to needs. The supplemental grant program may be provide lodging at hotels, motels, or other locations to form HOPL eligible persons for their household. And it can be short-term rent, mortgage, and utility assistance payments to prevent homelessness of tenants or mortgage guarantor of a dwelling for a period of up to 24 months. It is recommended to the Department of Public Health that this board approve the supplemental funds agreement with the California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS, provide acquired immunodeficiency syndrome clients care and support services to help slow the spread of the coronavirus in Kings County. This agreement has also been reviewed and approved by County Council.
Thank you very much. You want any question or comments for Nancy?
So move, Mr. Chair. Second.
Moved by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Peterson. Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Neves?
Yes.
Supervisor Valley?
Aye.
Supervisor Verboen,
Yes.
Supervisor Peterson.
Aye.
Supervisor Fagundes.
Yes.
Okay, the item has been approved, 5 in favor. And we'll move on now to the next item. And Supervisor Valley, you got a comment on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to remove myself from the conversation. I'll be turning off my camera as I attend this meeting virtually. I'll be turning off my camera and logging off the WebEx app to simulate the fact that if I was there in the chambers, I would actually be leaving the room. Mr. Chair, I'm going to do that to protect what I believe is to protect the integrity of the next agenda item and the decision that's before the board. But what I wanted to be clear about, Mr. Chairman, is that in government, when you talk about conflict of interest and why elected officials do things like I'm about to do right now, in government, conflict of interest is raised usually in two areas. Either the elected official stands to gain financially from a vote that they cast, or they will benefit in some form from a vote that they cast. And so I want to be clear to the members of the board and to the residents of the County of Kings that neither of those two things apply to me, Mr. Chair. But when I heard a couple of months ago, early on the COVID process, throughout this pandemic, what I heard from you and other members of the board was that small businesses were suffering because of what we were going through with this pandemic hitting the county. And when I heard that, Mr. Chair, I asked a lot of questions and I put a lot of time and energy into that. And I came to this board with a plan that helped small businesses and took them from a $2 million grant to a $5 million grant. That took a lot of time and energy and asking a lot of questions amongst staff and our department heads. I've taken that same time and energy as it relates to farm workers, Mr. Chair. It's no secret I've been very vocal about how we should protect them during this pandemic. At the time of helping small businesses, I believe our board shared a common vision. In fact, you thanked me, Mr. Chair, for my efforts to help small businesses. The common vision that the county has as it relates to COVID and farm workers, it's my humble opinion that we don't share that same common vision, Mr. Chair. So I'll be stepping out here, Mr. Chair. I'm happy without being a part of the next item because I can sleep good at night knowing that I followed my values that line up with the parents that raised me and how I was raised, and just as importantly, the values of my district. I also believe that the time to help farm workers was months ago. So I'll step out. You guys can do whatever you feel you need to do, Mr. Chairman, because farm workers, they're not in your hands. They're in the hands of God. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the comments. And we'll move on now to item number E3. Mr. Ed Hill.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ed Hill, Public Health. Also in the audience with me today, I have Darcy Pickens. She is the COVID support liaison with the department. If we start getting into very detailed questions about any of the RFPs or the proposals, she has all the details as she was on the scoring committee and I was not. You're going to bring up the presentation.
While we're waiting for the presentation, I wanted to mention to your board, this was going to be announced during unscheduled, but I think we missed it. So I wanted to let your.
I'm supposed to read this right after.
Well, no, we're just going to let the board know that we did receive under unscheduled comments, a comment from Superintendent of School, Pat Sanchez, regarding item E3 on the agenda in support of the federal resource. So I just wanted to make your board aware of that and the public know that these comments have been provided to the board and they will be a part of the record.
I got disoriented after the accusations made toward me on item, so. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up the presentation. I'll try and make this as painless as possible. So I want to quickly go over why testing is important. Testing gives us the opportunity to understand the true spread of and the nature of the virus. Surveillance testing also lets us get ahead of the virus and hopefully stop any outbreaks when we can identify early in any organizations or businesses. And then testing of asymptomatic patients can actually decrease our testing positivity value, which I'm going to get into a little bit more. As you know, the more you test people that have symptoms, the likelihood of them being positive are, which drives up our positivity value. And then the last one is last Tuesday, the governor announced a new metric that counties will be held accountable for. It's testing at least the state's average on a regular basis. If we test more than the current state average, we'll actually get a benefit. They actually will use that value to drive our score down. But if we test less than the state average, they penalize us and they actually turn around and change the score and raise it. There's a lot of controversy over this process, a lot of counties that are very unhappy about this. If you remember in the past, there were multiple metrics that we were held to. One of them was our testing positivity, and the other one was how many tests we conducted. It used to be that we had to meet 150 tests on average per day per 100,000 of our population. And what that meant for us was we needed to test 225 individuals on average a day to meet that metric. But there was kind of no harm, no foul on that metric at the time, other than you were on or off the monitoring list. With the governor's announcement on Tuesday, they have now changed that from that static value to an average. And so as that average changes, i.e. as more counties test, that average will increase. And therefore we have to increase our testing. In addition to that, they went ahead and roll out the way that it affects our scores. And on the screen there to the right, I have an image that I took this morning of the California Department of Public Health website on how this affects our testing. Our current new COVID case positivity score for 100,000 is 10.7. Our adjusted case rate for tier assignment is 11.3. Now we need the 10.7 to be at 7 or below to move into the next tier. And they're raising it to the 11.3 because we tested less than the state average when they ran this data. So again, it's another reason why we would want to test to meet the state average so that we're penalized for it. And if we actually test more again, they will actually give us credit and drive that score down lower. I'm going to get into more details about the tiered system during the regular update, but I just wanted to drive home the point why testing is important for us moving forward. So the progression of the timeline. So on July 14th, the board approved us using $1 million of CARES Act funds for testing through the county. This is in addition to the 1.6 that we had budgeted to continue the Opt-and-Serve contract at the Day Reporting Center. On August 18th, the board requested an RFP process for service procurement using the RFP process under the recommendation of County Council. And on August 20th through the 25th, the county released the RFP. We received 4 proposals. All 4 proposals had identified deficiencies, and additional information was requested from each vendor on August 25th with a deadline of August 26th. On August 26th, we received 3 out of the 4 vendor responses. And the Public Health Review Committee started to do the scoring process. Also on that day, if you recall, that's when I was notified by the California Office of Emergency Services that we were eligible and could receive a free mobile testing unit. And then I informed your board of that possibility of that free resource coming our way. On August 28th, the RFP intent to award notification was extended. I'm saying that wrong, I know, Ms. Burdick. We requested the applicants if they would be willing to leave their proposals stand for 30 days. Okay, I'm getting the head nod, I'm doing better. And
Mr. Hill, are you supposed to be progressing the slides
No.
as you're, okay, my apology.
and then on August 28th, the RFP and, on August 31st, one applicant, North Fresno Primary Care, withdrew their proposal. September 1st, the board voted to keep the RFP open for a 30-day period as discussed and gather more information on available testing resources. And then I've Not sure if this has made it to your board, but I want to take this opportunity to mention here on September 3rd, the Unified Support Team Lead, Trudy Raimundo from the California Department of Public Health, reached out to me and notified me that there's another free mobile testing resource available through the Emergency Medical Services Authority of California. Again, I'm just going to point out that this stuff changes every minute and it just keeps coming. So the reason I bring that up is there's actually a fourth resource that's available that we're getting into and looking at. So to summarize, we have private vendor contract RFPs. We have the federal/state mobile testing resource provided by the National Guard through the California Office of Emergency Services. And then we have the new one that was just presented on the 3rd, which is a federal/state mobile testing resource provided by the National Guard and the California Emergency Medical Services Authority. I want to bring up that as these things emerge, they don't always emerge as this is what the resource is. For instance, when we were notified about the mobile resource that is currently here today that I'm going to talk about, is presented to us as a federal resource. It wasn't until 3-4 days later on that we identified or learned that it was National Guard. Same with the resource that's being presented to us through the Offices of Emergency Medical Services Agency. It was presented to us as a state resource, but now we find out that it is through the National Guard as well. So we're learning from our lessons. And then another option is a Department of Public Health mobile testing with a private lab contract. Again, I want to get all options on the table so that they're clearly understood. So I'm going to go through the RFP process and the requirements. So we required service to be testing provided throughout the county in various locations as dictated or indicated by us, including but not limited to Corcoran, Lemoore, Avenel, and Kettleman City. We required that they use the PCR, a molecular test, not a serology test. As I mentioned before, those have not really come to full fruition yet. We asked that the vendor have the ability to collect medical billing insurance information and share that with public health so that if we can recover any costs, we could. We asked that they provide staff who are appropriate licensed to perform the duties required, but without necessarily inflating the cost of the process. And then for testing availability, we required that they provide the services 7 days a week, Monday through Fridays until 7 p.m., and then on Saturdays and Sundays from 8 until 5 p.m. The RFPs were reviewed by a scoring committee that consisted of Ms. Pickens, our nursing division manager, a program manager, and a program specialist. And these are the scores that were calculated for the respective remaining vendors. You see that Well Health, which, and I'm going to go through each one of these proposals in a little bit more detail, was the highest scoring group there. Only 2 of the vendors met the local vendor preference, which was they had to be a vendor in the Central Valley. And then all of the other remaining values are as presented on the screen. Applicant 1, Well Health Incorporated. In the proposal, they indicated they have experience running drive-through and walk-up COVID-19 PCR testing to skilled nursing facilities, businesses, cities, and county government since March 2020. They've established an electronic system called Go Get Tested that is fully self-contained from registration to results reporting, with several options for sharing patients and service data with the department. And they've established protocols and process flow for how this mobile site works. They do have Spanish-speaking staff on site that have experience providing testing to hard-to-reach populations through community-based organizations. The proposal was organized and contained a thorough description of the services to be provided, and they responded completely and immediately to the request for additional information on the items that we needed to have addressed. Their startup time is within 10 days of the award, and they were available for all days requested and times. Their cost is $175 per test with no additional fees or overhead. They also have the ability and offered in their proposal a live call center for patients to call and schedule, talk to physicians, or just get general questions answered, as well as when individuals identified as COVID positive, they will receive a phone call from a licensed provider. Initial triage will classify the patients into asymptomatic, mild to medium risk, symptomatic, positive, high risk, and then requires immediate attention. And again, that will be shared with the Department of Public Health. The next vendor, HR support, indicated experience running drive-through and walk-up COVID testing with businesses, cities, and county governments since March 2020 as well. Spanish-speaking staff on site and experience in providing in-home testing to hard-to-reach populations. Established lab partnership process flow for training new employees, registration, testing, and online generation of reports, but little detail was provided. Proposal contained description of services to be provided, but lacked some organizational detail, and they responded and corrected that detail to the questions that we submitted to them. Startup of the services would happen within 24 hours of the contract award, and they were also available for all dates and time as indicated through the RFP. Their costs are $79 per test with a $4,000 to $4,500 daily overhead for the first 200 tests, and then the test price would decrease to $10 per test for any test after 200. EmployNet is the third applicant. They have experience running drive-through and walk-up COVID screening and testing sites, and the duration of scale of an unknown time, so they weren't really clear on how long they have been doing it. Spanish speaking on site, but they did not list any experience in reaching hard to reach populations. Proposal was clear, complete with a clear scope of work provided, including test protocols, supply list, and roles of on-site staff and support team. But it was difficult to distinguish between experience providing temperature screenings versus actual COVID testing. So we sought clarification from this group, and again, they responded with the required information. We also identified that they were using phlebotomists as on-site staff, which may inflate their costs as that level of licensure is not required for this testing. They have 3 to 4 week startup time. They're available for all requested dates and times thereafter. Their costs are $132 per test with a $2,969 daily overhead fee. Proposer, North Fresno Primary Care. They did not include experience running mobile COVID testing in their proposal, but they have ample experience running testing within the clinic. They have Spanish-speaking staff on site with experience with farm workers and communities within the Central Valley. They did not include a scope of work and the details within that section. PCR tests would be provided, but a protocol for the mobile site and subsequent reporting had not been established. They did use high-level staff on site, such as physicians, nurse practitioners, and medical assistants, which we think affected their costs. They have a 1 week startup time, and they were only available for weekends. They were not available Monday through Friday. Their initial cost is $90 per test with a $26,732 daily overhead fee. They also were the only organization that included $85,000 in their startup cost, procure equipment, insurance, project coordination, and marketing as well. Need to be clear here that they're the only ones who outline that in the budget. Those costs may and likely are included in the other proposals. They're just encapsulated within their costs. So those are the vendors and their proposals. I'd like to now go over the Cal OES Federal State Mobile Testing Resource. As you know, this resource is run by the California Office of Emergency Services and the National Guard from September 14th to September 28th, with the anticipated but not confirmed possibility of the Public Health Department being able to take over at that point. And what I mean by take over is currently they are deployed with men and women from the Army National Guard that handle all the administration of the site, set up, tear down, registration, things along those lines. It's about 5 to 6 individuals. The remaining staff are medical staff. The RV is a regular RV. The canopies are regular canopies. But we're in the process of when that National Guard unit is demobilized, public health can take over the administration of that site. And so they would no longer be uniform personnel there, and we anticipate it lasting till the end of December. It is a 30-foot RV with pop-up tents. It's a self-swab process. It's a PCR test, as Chairman Boone has experienced. We can establish the site based on community needs and direct it wherever we want it to go in the county. It's completely free testing. They don't even collect insurance information. And testing is provided 6 days a week, Saturday through Thursday. There's minimal information collected during registration, and there's no citizenship requirement. Individuals have the ability to register in advance online, or they can register when they walk up. They do ask for an email address, but if you don't have one, it's not a requirement. They will just create a username and password for you to check your results on your own, so that way you don't have to worry about providing them any additional information. I want to be clear here that no matter what process or testing we go through, we do have to collect minimal information. It makes no sense for us to test individuals and then have no way to be able to reach out to them and notify them that they're positive. It also makes no sense for us not to be able to case investigate, find out who their close contacts are so we can test them as well. So all the processes always include that. Again, after September 28th, it's anticipated that we, the California, or excuse me, not California, Kings County Department of Public Health can take over this resource and run the administrative duties. I say anticipate because of recent scheduling challenges may have put this resource at risk. We're working hard to get it scheduled and make sure they stay busy, because if we can't keep them busy, they will return home. So we're working hard to do that. The next one is the new resource that I just brought up to your attention regarding the September 3rd notification from Trudy Raimundo from the California Department of Public Health. We're currently in preliminary discussions. This will be a EMSA, or Emergency Medical Services, and National Guard resource. And the other details are pending, like how often can we move it? What support do we have to provide? All of the details you need to know how to support one of these sites. And I'll provide more information as those arrive. The last option that we have is the Kings County Department of Public Health Mobile Testing Unit, which is our unit, which we have deployed in the past at certain organizations as well as the agriculture industry. It is a PCR test. We can do this 7 days a week, but it would compound some of our staffing shortages, and it may be difficult for us to manage. It would require us to pull key staff and adjust our schedules at public health to accommodate for the weekends and after hour schedules. But the mobile unit is a trusted community resource. As I've mentioned before, we've deployed it in the past. We could also provide other services such as immunizations and flu shots with it being deployed. And the cost would be somewhere around 100 to 150 per test, and approximately an additional 2,500 a day in staff, maintenance, and fuel. I'm going to get into pros and cons on this one. I just want to be clear that this is not one of the proposals that I'm highly recommending, as it creates challenges for public health. But I wanted to make sure all options were on the table so that the board was well informed.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So on all the submittals, the test cost for an actual swab test is between $132, somewhere $179. Where does that money go? So we pay, I got swabbed yesterday, and there's a cost to that test. Is that something that that's what's being covered by the state government or federal government? And when that cost of that test, is that something that is required, the amount of money that the cost is from the lab test, pay the lab, or how does that work? Because I know the prices vary. Even our own testing is 100 to 150.
Correct.
So if we do 200 tests a day, that's $20,000 a day that we have to spend on getting the test sampled. Is that where the cost comes into?
There's multiple areas of cost. There's the
patient to the lab.
Yeah. Like Well Health, their cost, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. It was 175 per test.
Yeah.
That's an all-encompassing cost, and that's the only cost that they recommended. So for that, they're proposing to provide the staff, the equipment, and everything, and they're going to bill us 175 for every test. The mobile unit that you went to yesterday, sponsored by the National Guard and the state, that's a total free test, as in we won't be paying any funds for that. You won't be paying any funds for that. That'll be a cost picked up by the federal government.
Yeah, my question was, I don't know, I mean, so if I had my own test and I had to pay out of my pocket, I would pay $175 and it would probably encompass someone capturing the swab, sealing it up, taking it to the lab, waiting for the result and reporting back to me. That's the actual solution to draw out the sample.
Right. Well Health proposal includes all of that from.
We can't do nothing about that. That's just already, that's an existing cost that exists and there's not really any deals out there.
Right.
Unless we do it ourselves, then we save on doing it ourselves and charging that 175 back to us to cover our cost.
Right. That would be but we would still use CARES Act funds.
Right.
The only option that doesn't use CARES Act funds right now is the federal resource that's currently deployed with the Cal OES, and then the possible one that's deployed by the EMS authority, which I brought up today. All the others
There's money being made in the people that have the labs that are doing these tests.
Yes. Okay, so to go over a summary of options, we have the mobile testing vendors, which cost anywhere from $7,900 to $87,000 per day, depending on the vendor and the numbers of tests conducted. The main risk on this, that it includes the cancellation of contract due to low testing numbers. For instance, Well Health, if they came here and they're only charging $175 per day, but they're only testing 10 people a day, they're not going to stick around. They're going to leave. Also, that creates a finite number of tests that can be collected. We only have $1 million, and if you multiply that across the spectrum, that means we will only be able to collect anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 samples. And then depending on the vendor, the funds may be extended without volume testing occurring daily or overhead. In other words, those that have the daily cost of providing the service, we're going to pay them to do the service whether they collect the samples or not. If you recall, Well Health didn't have an daily overhead, the remaining vendors did. The main benefits is it offers us a great deal of flexibility. They complete the project management. We don't really get involved other than executing the contract and making sure they're meeting their requirements. And then it's not governmental affiliated. There's been a lot of issue with the resource that's here now because they wear their camouflage. The thought is it scares individuals off. Again, we can counter that when those individuals are demobilized and they return and put our staff in that spot, but it is an option. The next option is the federal state mobile testing vendor. Again, this is zero project cost outside of our staff if we take over from them on the 28th. We're anticipating that number to be about $140,000 till the end of December, but we can use ELC CARES funds to pay for that or other opportunities to pay for that. Also, I'm sorry, I need to make sure that we draw the distinction between CARES Act funds, which the county received, the 15.9, and ELC CARES Act, which your board just approved today. They both say CARES, but they're different pots of money. So we would use those funds to cover that staffing cost. The main risk include change in availability after the 28th. That's going to create a gap in that high risk population. We want to get this to the agricultural community, and that fear sets in because of the way that those individuals are dressed. So we're going to have a gap of time where we can't move that resource out there, or they're unwilling to be tested because of that fear. And we won't be able to remedy that until we take it over. The main benefits is there's low cost, if any, to us. And then again, if we can keep it busy, we can take it over after September. And then we also have more project control and we have the ability to test up to 500 individuals a day until the end of December, which if you do the math, that's about 50,000 tests compared to the 5,000 or 6,000 if you use the other option. Again, summarizing the options, using public health as opportunity, the costs are about 100 to 150 tests depending on the volume. We'd be able to do about 60 tests per day to make it last to the end of September. Again, this is not a free test. We would be using CARES Act funds for this, not ELC CARES. The main risk includes delayed results and turnaround lab time experienced by other existing labs that I mentioned earlier in Supervisor Valdez's question, like Quest and LabCorp. The compounding existing staff shortages, our department will be highly subject to that as well. And testing availability would be contingent on the current COVID status in the county. And as outbreaks occur, we would have to pull staff away from that to cover that. The main benefit is it offers more project control because it's a resource. Options to provide additional services also a benefit. But again, I'm just putting that as a last ditch effort on the table if we get into a bind, because again, it's probably not the best resource to be used that way. And then there's also an option of using a mobile testing vendor from one of the RFP and teaming it up or running it concurrently with the federal resource. So the cost would obviously increase there, and we would spend the $1 million associated with the CARES Act fund that your board approved on the 14th. And then we could also deploy it in the agriculture communities while using the federal resource to stick into the larger populous areas. The main risk there is there's probably not enough work to go around. We struggle to get testing volume up as it is. And if we start flooding the community with all these testing options, everybody's test volumes are going to drop. The main benefit, obviously, the increased capacity and flexibility to provide testing whenever and wherever needed, and the ability to provide both private and government managed sites at the same time. So therefore, it's recommended your board receive and file this report and take actions necessary. Concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one. So how many people got tested yesterday out here? Do you know?
101.
101.
Which,
not bad.
For day one, we've never seen numbers that high.
So to do, it looks like on the proposals, RFPs, they're looking like 200 is what they needed to get for an average day. But we got 100 here today, yesterday, 200 in 8 hours. That's like every 2.5 minutes, someone gets tested. That's when people lining up to get tested. We need a captive audience to make that work. And so if we can't get this one to get up to 200, why are we going to go out for RFP for another one? I mean, do we have we had 9 people on Sunday night that tested positive in our county.
Yes.
We need to get people tested, but we need to set up a program to where, like, I got tested yesterday, I should probably get tested next Monday too. Like reoccurring, not just, well, I tested, I'm good.
Right.
It's been 6 months. I should have been tested probably 20 times in the 6 months, the way it looks right now, to keep myself safe.
Yeah, so we really need to start working on our messaging. That's that surveillance testing that I was talking about. But then, of course, there's those individuals that think the higher we test, we're just doing it to drive up the positive numbers, which isn't the case. We're actually doing it to drive up the negative numbers. So our positivity number will change.
So we need to brainstorm on how we utilize this free testing without spending $26,000 a day plus $86,000 startup fee to have someone come into our community that doesn't know our community. We know it better than anybody else. So
right.
What are our options? Do we take it amongst ourselves? I mean, we're only more today. Hopefully we have 100 plus people test there. We'll run it for 7 days, and then we need to go on the ag community apparently, because it's our test. Apparently, what I heard earlier, we missed our mark. It's too late already, but I don't think it's too late. I think it's time to get people comfortable and be tested.
Correct. And a lot of that comfort, I'm anticipating will change when the uniformed men and women of the National Guard.
There was only 3 of them out there in the air. I think they're playing cards.
Yeah.
And they weren't, the guy that tested me or handed me the test kit had scrubs on, and it was just one-on-one. It was no big deal. And I did my own test. So I think the fear of what happened, I've heard all kinds of stories about, oh my God, it was nothing. And I know what nothing, yeah, it was no big deal. As far as Marines, I don't know. I don't have that mentality that they scare me. If they do scare you, then go to the clinic over here by the probation, which that scares some other people.
Right.
So there's always be some kind of fear out there.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be able to completely bridge that gap. In fact, those are the discussions I have with the state when they're rolling out this testing matrix, because this is going to be a difficult population to reach and build that trust.
I don't understand the fear from the Marines or what National Guard. what do we need to look at? Do we have free taco with your test swab? Do we do something like we have a group of people at a lunch venue where they come get tested with your free lunch? I know Gar Bennett is big in the ag community, and they'll have these drive-through lunches. And maybe we can team up with them and do a drive-through lunch with a vendor, sponsor a lunch or halfway sponsor a lunch, and get these tests, get people comfortable with getting tested. I don't know. The one-time test is out of the picture. We got to keep people tested until there's a vaccine.
Right.
And let them know that it's not dangerous, it's not evasive, and you can go there and get it done really easily.
Yeah, it's going to take the entire community getting behind this to make it successful. You know, and we're open to any ideas. We've reached out to the faith-based organization to advertise it, make sure everybody understands that it's a safe place and a good thing to do. Local chambers are also involved. They're helping us with that.
Farm Bureau, I spoke to the Farm Bureau. They're interested in helping us too.
Yeah, the hospitals, we're trying to put the resource everywhere. It's going to be at Tachi on Sunday, and we've asked them to give them a $5 gambling voucher if they get think outside the box, try and, increase the testing processes.
Well, I talked to you the other day about, the Speedway would like to start expanding a little bit more. And I thought we could park it out there during an event and say, free entrance with a test. Maybe we get 500 people a test in one day. I don't know.
See, and those are perfect examples of where the public health department's testing resources could get involved. Again, I don't know the exact details of the EMS authority site that's being proposed. But the one we have now is once they set up shop, they stay there for the day, because it would be nice if they would move multiple times through the day. But, if we have resources and we're not being bogged down, public health has that ability to help in those situations as well. We're limited to 60 tests right now, but we still have the ability to do that.
Do you feel we missed the mark by not doing a sole source contract with a vendor a month ago?
It complicated things, but, I see my role as making sure the board is aware of all opportunities so that we can be the most fiscally and responsible as we move through the process. And I identified that there was an opportunity for us to get extended long-term testing through this free resource, which, as I mentioned in this presentation, we get limited testing using that $1 million. To the tune of,
but you take $1 million, divide it up by test. That's a lot of tests, and we don't have people coming through wanting to get tested. But we got to get the reassurance in the community that, hey, even though you've been tested once before, maybe you should test every 3 weeks, something like that. It's time to be tested instead of doing I mass campaign. Time to get retested campaign. We got to keep our numbers, our negative numbers up, so that we can open up our community.
Right.
So. We got the RFPs on August 25th, so it's been 3 weeks. We've missed out. I don't know what the numbers were last night. Were they, 15. So we got low numbers. We need high negative tests to offset it. What's that?
The prison side was different.
Yeah, but we can't go in prison.
Correct. That's what I mean. The prison's numbers don't matter. They matter, but we have little control.
The inmates don't matter.
Right.
They're not in our count. Right. The staff are.
Well, they matter. They just don't matter to the test.
Sorry. Yes, that's.
Yeah.
Don't want to have
wrong terminology.
Don't want to be misinterpreted.
Correct.
Well, any more question or comments? Do you guys want to go off RP and pick one of those? And I honestly think that we have a free vendor. We can't get the numbers up over 200, 300 a day. Someone's going out for somebody else. If there was a line out there yesterday and I had to wait to get in, by all means, we need another vendor. Until the community feels comfortable to getting tested a couple times a month, I don't know that we need it.
Mr. Chair, Ed, do we know how many of those are repetitive, like the long-term care facilities? They like to have their staff tested on a weekly basis or monthly basis. And do we have a handle on how many of our population is repetitively being tested?
We do. The hospitals, the skilled nursing facilities, I believe the schools are all required to what's known as serial test. It's not their option. They're made to test every week by the California Department of Public Health Licensing and Certification. And the prison staff are also serially tested.
And so what is that number? Is that a 10,000 people?
I
7,000?
don't know the number off the top of my head, but it is a large chunk. If you want to take in comparison, if you look at the testing values for the prisons, now again, I want to make sure I'm just using this as an example. It has nothing to do with our numbers, but they're already at 29,000 tests over the last 3 to 4 months, and that's because they do that serial testing.
Right.
And we can get that number. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Because and I guess I'm coming at it from a different perspective. Is as a county, we've tested 39,600 or almost 700 people, about 26% of our population. I happen to pull up the numbers from Calviva. How many of our population of Calviva, and only about half of those got shots last year, and they were free. Is it a wrong comparison? On a decent year, we only get a 40% turnout on, voting. What number should be our goal? And I know the governor wants a high number, and I know this free procedure has the potential of adding another 50,000 tests. But what is a realistic goal of the number of people to be tested in the county? Because I know it's not realistic to have 100%. I know it's not realistic in my mind not to even have 50%. But what, as a health department perspective, what should be our goal to establish a number of people to be tested?
We can look what the CDC recommends, from my perspective, as well as Dr. Teskey. Since it started, we feel as many people as possible should be tested.
No, and I agree with that. I just want to have a number, because again, I guess I just have a different perspective. When the numbers got above 10%, I know the illness is already in our community. Do I really need to keep testing? The prevalence of this illness is in our community. So do I really care that it's 10% or 15 or 30?
Right.
The response is going to be the same. And so I just struggle with these numbers, and I think it should be the free resource, because I think in my mind, we've already hit our threshold.
I got tested for the first time yesterday.
Correct.
I never had any symptoms, never had any signs. I felt, well, maybe it's time to get tested just for the good. I need to understand the process. I've had my employees tested. Everybody's been negative,
Right.
But I didn't see the need to come get tested. That's not the mentality we have to use to meet the needs of the government. We need to have a random, not random, but we give blood every 8 weeks. Maybe you got to get tested every 2 weeks. Something that get a reoccurring phone call. I know there's some apps you can put on your phone. If your appointment time is this time, you come in and get your test. Or we just go around and find sites that, DMV always has a long line at the captive audience right there to start you get tested and get you in a little faster. I don't know the answer. When we talk about farm labor workers and getting out to the communities where they're at, apparently there's a fear with the military garb that they're wearing. Maybe we ask them not to wear the military uniform that day, or just keep their distance. I don't know. Maybe we tie it in with somebody like Gar Bennett that does a drive-through lunch. Supervisor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to the health department. I know this has been quite the teeter-totter. There's unfortunately been, people that purposely throw a lot of weight onto the teeter-totter to try to bend this in one way or the other. And that's unfortunate. I think the goal is obviously to get people tested and to do it in a responsible way. From the standpoint of this opportunity, and looking at, I think our discussion last week talked about, not in certain areas, but countywide, anybody and everybody that we could get tested. From the employer, farm worker standpoint, did a lot of work on this last week. Want to thank, all the industry representatives involved. They represent the employee, the employer. Groups like the California Farm Worker Foundation have agreed to step up. They've talked about the effectiveness of the mobile testing facility in Kern County. I think the one challenge is the uniform. We've had, discussions and, the employee-employer relationship is very vital. And in today's world, the challenge in retaining employees because, there's a finite number of those folks and they're fleet, I mean, if they feel threatened, they can go and get another job, first thing in the morning. So I think being thoughtful through that process, again, working through all the industry, not just employer but employee based, California Farm Worker Foundation. I think this is a real achievable goal. The industry has stepped up and they want to work with us, but there are some parameters that we need to work through. But I think it's a functional way. From also with respect to how do we draw those out? Again, industry groups willing to put up sanitation masks. Our what do you call it? Stuff that kills the bacteria in your hands.
So
the wipes, whatever.
use it every day.
I mean, thank you. Trying to that along with swag, making sure that if it's an employer-based effort, that they get, a location that's acceptable. And all of that is occurring. The discussions are occurring and they've been very fruitful, from all involved. And so I'm confident that this is going to work. My comments earlier with respect to, $1 million, I think we all understand our requirements as not just, using the tools that we have, but also being, financially responsible with the money that's providing us. And I just don't take, $1 million for granted in a process when we have not one, but now two free opportunities. And again, maybe, they are effective and maybe they have some modifications that need to occur, but based on the amount of tests that we've done, the amount that people are willing to test, I think this is the most responsible opportunity for us to use. And I just can't see the $1 million making a difference in what the end product is going to be. And again, we want to test where we're wanted. And that is, been talked about. And I think it's been proven in Kern County that it can exist with industry support. And so, I think this mobile testing, the free mobile testing asset that we have is going to pay dividends, and that's what we should focus on.
Okay. So with that, we have a phone caller calling in. Rick Merigian is on the line. Rick, are you there?
Hi. Good morning, everybody. I've been on the call because I'm waiting to do a few things with Rebecca, but I just had a comment. And I think that the biggest thing here to look at is not situating the testing, because Ed Hill has brought up a number of good testing possibilities and the free testing and so forth. But the quintessential problem here is marketing. A marketing campaign needs to be done to direct people to the outlets that Ed settles on or the board, and just effectively target it, whether it's free testing from the National Guard or whatever you guys decide on. But I got tested for campaign that's geared towards that demographic that you guys want, ag in general, if that's what it is. That would be the best approach to this. Just clearly make it effective, in my opinion. But I think you guys should look at just having a campaign that's directed towards, I got tested for, and pushing everybody to where the board and Ed settles on to do the testing. And I just think that's the whole key here. But I just wanted to add that. It's not a hard thing to do either, but that's the biggest problem.
It's for himself, not for his client. Yep, well, thank you, appreciate that. Good, I mask, I test, I everything. Thanks for your comment. As far as the sole source, what we're on right now, we need to make a decision whether we're gonna go with it or not. So, I just, if you take 200 tests a day, I don't know, if you've done the math, how many days we'd get out of $1 million?
Yeah.
200 tests a day?
So a couple points I want to address. One made by Chairmember Boone. We did ask them to dress down. We even asked them to wear lab coats, but they're deployed Army assets, so they won't do that. But again, if we can keep the resource here, they will only be here for 2 weeks, and then our staff can step in and take over. With the $1 million and the tests per day values that we've calculated, including public health, we only anticipate being able to test 5,000 to 6,000 samples with $1 million. And that's if we go with a RFP vendor, if we go with public health, the only one that doesn't have that cost associated with it are the free tests provided by the National Guard and the one possibly from IMSA.
Like I said, if I see a line and people wanting to get tested, I think we have a need to go for an outside vendor. Until then, I think we should just keep it in our back pocket until we have we may have a problem, we may not. Like I said yesterday, I made an appointment. I thought I was gonna be late in, 20 minutes from the time I decided to go do it. They didn't have anybody out there getting tested. So, I thought there'd be a line, but they're not. So until we have a line, I don't know. Until the community understands that they need to be tested regularly, then you shouldn't spend any money till then.
And there are other test sites, Mr. Chair. United Healthcare at the Calviva meeting, they're testing 1,500 per week. That's not in Kings County, that's in the 3-county region, but I don't know how many are coming out of Save Mart and Walmart and all of the other pharmacies and some of the other health centers that are also testing. So I don't want you to think that this is a limited resource. This is, there are tremendous amount of resources.
I had a phone call on Sunday morning. A parent was panicked because their daughter needed to be tested and needed to find out a testing site immediately because she had to be somewhere the next day and had to prove that she was negative. There was a testing site a mile from my house that tested her. She was a nurse. It was within 30 minutes. She was 80% on that test. It's 80%. So she got tested negative. She got to go to her job interview or whatever she had to do the next day. And she did both tests. They did the swab and the instant test. So she'll know she was negative the first time. And within 24 hours, she'll know, or 48 hours, she'll know if the next one is the right or not. So I know they're out there. The mobile is just to get it out there to the outlying parts of our community where we have the migrant farm workers. Because at the time they were an issue because we had Imperial County coming up here spreading the virus.
And also to address Supervisor Nev's comment, the last time I checked, there's 32 testing sites available in Kings County, all within a 20-mile radius of Hanford. The difference between those and this mobile testing site is this is the one true free site where they don't collect billing information. It doesn't matter, document status. It's just absolutely free. They don't even bill your insurance.
Yeah, they don't take, and many of the other places, they waive the copay. Calviva, I was able to last year convince them that, for many years, we have continued to support the immunizations for kids, especially get ready for school, but we never immunized the parents or the grandparents. And so that's how come I think we even got up to 47 or 48%. Is because we incorporated it in with the new baby clinics and the new baby showers that Calviva does, is to go ahead and bring in the grandparents and bring in the parents and get everybody immunized at the same time. And so I think the marketing part was there, but we're still only at 50% of those members that are eligible. So I still think that person has to have a reason to go. Health department called and said I was around somebody that was positive, and so I need to go get tested. I went to Save Mart, I went to Costco, I went to Home Depot, I went somewhere, and there was a guy coughing in the aisle, in front of me. Okay, so they need to be tested. I'm not sure everybody's gonna want to, that if you're staying home and even as far as the churches, you know, before when they had services, there was people there. The governor shut all that down.
Well, how about we just do a campaign and say, you want to go to church, you go get tested, you show up with a negative test, you're welcome in.
I think that's what Emmanuel's trying to do with the school, you know, and the governor is trying to stop them. So, you know, I hear you and I understand it, but it just seems like the governor's not, he's talking out of one side of his face while he's producing a product that is not conducive for testing.
Yeah, and you know, I continue to stress that. In fact, when we have these calls about these metrics and all of these items, I continue to stress that, you know, the fear is very real, and the need to test isn't really there, as we've talked about here. And until they address those, it's going to be difficult. And again, you know, we do need to push this as hard as we can.
Okay, so we can talk about it forever until we.
Yeah, free test. Can we, instead of using your resources, what if we would have a cooperative agreement with some of the nursing programs or some of the other service clubs to be able to do the staffing? Because really that staffing just sets up.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't do any of the medical procedures. And I would like to see, to be honest with you, if you are going to get in that business, I'm not sure when you're going to get the flu immunizations, but we got to get 2 for 1, and you get swabbed for COVID and get your flu shot at the same time.
Right.
You know, and try to maximize that. Yeah.
I don't get a flu shot. I only got one time, and that was 10 years ago when I became a board member and I went to health department and they sat me around a table to explain what their budget's like. And the first question they asked me was, did you get a flu shot? And they shamed me into getting a flu shot before they talked to me. So
good.
And that was 10 years ago?
Hey, I got a flu shot. I'm good, right? You know, we have that mentality. I don't go out and get a flu shot. I've never had the flu.
That's the mentality that why people don't get tested either. Though it's my mentality.
Yeah, no,
but yet I'll go get a flu shot every year. You know, because you know, and I'll go donate blood every 8 weeks because I think that's and if I ever get called by the health department saying I've been exposed, or if somebody that I've been around says that, hey, I tested positive, well, then I'll get tested. But I'm not sure. Walking through life,
you might be carrying a virus in that beard.
Could be. Yeah, absolutely. It's between that and a little bit of waffle from breakfast, but
Mr. Chairman,
I'm saving that for lunch.
So with respect to what we have on the agenda today, the recommendation, receive an update on COVID-19 mobile testing efforts and take appropriate action as deemed necessary. From the respect of the timeline on the RFPs, when is the drop dead date of decision required that was in the RFP?
Currently, we have asked the eligible vendors to extend and hold their bids open for 30 days. That 30 days expires on September 27th. We can, of course, ask them to continue to hold the bids open. We can't guarantee that they will agree to, but that is an option that the board could implement in any motion that it might take with regard to free testing as well.
Okay. Well, I'll defer to the board on, you know, what action they want to take, you know, from our health director's opinion. Would you prefer to hold these RFPs to see the functionality of the free testing asset, or do you believe this is, well, that's an unfair question, I think. Put that on you.
Thank you.
So I guess I would just defer to the board to, you know, is this something that we want to hold, or are we ready to dispatch this and move on? Well,
like I said, my thoughts are, if there's not a line to get tested and we can't utilize this one to our benefit that's free, why would we pay for one that we
exactly
have? So, until we see a need for it, let's just give this one a go for, a good week, see where we stand up. If we got people that don't have time to get tested, yes, sir.
And then just to clarify again, that resource is here now and already testing.
Right.
And we've identified the barrier and we've already got an action in place to correct that, no matter if it's our staff or a CBO or whatever we decide to do. But we've identified the barrier, at least as it's been presented to me, and we can correct that very soon. So
We have a schedule for a week right now, correct?
yeah, and we're working on next week's schedule.
And now are you reaching out to the community to see, like you said, chambers are working on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot of places in the works. In fact, the email that was submitted was from one of the superintendent of schools that wants this resource fast. The hospital is interested in it. The clinics are interested in it. We've just got to fill up the schedule so that they have a reason to stay here.
They do a Friday night downtown where they shut the streets off. Maybe we have it sitting down there for people to get tested before they have dinner. We just got to get people comfortable that say, okay, I should get tested. It's here. Let's do it. I got a few minutes.
Right.
Instead of taking time off work. I don't know. I'm not a marketing campaign guy, but I think once people are comfortable, after myself doing it yesterday, I'll go back next week and do it again, just because it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, and if you look at it from the perspective of many of the things or questions that's been presented to me in the past, is what do we have to do to open? If we don't test to the state's median, we're going to get dinged for it. They're going to raise our score. If we test in excess of that, they're going to drive down our score. Plus, it adjusts our positivity number. Again, as long as we're testing everyone, just not people with symptoms, that positivity number can change.
But based on the state's testing metric now, you could be doing adequate testing, but I mean, we're put up against LA and San Francisco. If they're doing adequate testing, then we're no matter how much we're testing, we're inadequate, correct?
And it's my understanding that they're going to address that. They were testing, or they were going to set the standard as the average. But as anybody with basic statistic knowledge knows, that you can't use an average when you have skewed data in your instance.
Right.
So they're switching to the median, which is much lower. When they switch to the median, we will exceed their testing numbers.
Good.
So.
And do we know when the governor's going to switch to that again?
No comment.
Okay.
No, just kidding. So that's going to happen soon. Very
Next
soon.
Monday briefing
Yeah, probably.
or Monday noon briefing?
Okay, item on the table right now is to go for pick an RFP and go forward. And do I have a motion? Item's gonna die lack of a motion. And thank you, Ed, appreciate it. And we'll move on now to administration, Rebecca Campbell.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
We need a 5-minute break for restrooms.
Well, and then we have
Yeah.
CalPFA at 11.
We need direction on whether we seek the RFP proposers to extend, or we allow that, or we tell them you're terminating the RFP without an
I
award.
would say again to my board members that we should at least keep it available to us in case we have an outbreak and we need to use it and we can't. The one we have is not enough.
It's only going to go one more week.
So the question would be, do
You
you
extend it?
want us to ask them to keep it open for another 30
We
days?
can ask to extend, correct? Another 30
I'm
days.
sorry.
We can ask them to extend another 30 days.
It's in the RFP process, but I'm going to need council to weigh in here that we can modify the timeline.
Yeah, I would say die lack of a second and ask the vendors to extend 30 more days.
Okay, but I need a consensus from the group that the group is okay directing us to ask them to extend 30 days.
Yeah, good luck. But I don't know, we have 10 days. When is our next board meeting?
22nd, that would be a week from today.
And the 27th is the end of the period. So if we take no action.
Take no action and see what we end up next Tuesday.
Make sure that our.
Bring it back next Tuesday.
Testing
Vendor out here
asset
has,
is,
they can't service enough because they don't have enough staff. And we need another one. Then we'll go ahead and pick one next Tuesday.
Okay.
And if we can't get any more than 100 people a day, then I don't know what we're, you got to get people wanting to go back. I'll go back next Tuesday or Monday. I'll get tested again. I'll try to find someone to go with me. Okay. You do it yourself. It's not that big deal. Thank you. So dial lack of a second, and we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. Come back at 11:20.
And then do CalPFA.
CalPFA. Yep. Okay, we are back live. It is 11:22, and this is still the Kings County Board of Supervisors, and we're going to go move on now to the California Public Finance Authority. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Did you call Supervisor Valley online?
Yeah, he's on.
Okay.
Joe Nevs,
Here.
Richard Valley,
Yeah, here.
Doug Verboon,
Here.
Craig Peterson,
Here.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
Okay, 5 members present. We're going to go to item number 2, approval of the minutes from August 18th, 2020.
So move it, Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Nev, second by Supervisor Fagundes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley,
Aye.
Doug Verboon, Craig Peterson,
Here.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
5 members approve the consent calendar as present, the approval of minutes as presented. We'll move on now to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar be listed as one motion.
So move it, Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Nev.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Peterson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs,
Yes.
Richard Valley,
Aye.
Doug Verboon,
Yes.
Craig Peterson,
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
Okay,
Yes.
5 members have voted in favor, and we've approved the consent calendar as presented, and now we have public comment. Anybody who would like to speak at public comments?
We have no hands up, sir.
No hands up. We'll go to staff comments. No
Does
staff,
not appear we have any staff on the line.
no staff, and we'll adjourn the meeting and head on back over to the board members meeting.
Okay, I'll take the next item. Rebecca.
And we're back at administration from Rebecca Campbell.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Rebecca Campbell. This is a weekly update on the COVID-19 pandemic. We didn't meet last week, so this week covers a 2-week session. I'll first talk about state actions, talk about any federal actions that have occurred, and then I'll turn it over to Edward Hill after I do a local update. This morning, I will spend some time talking about an update on our media campaign. So what I'd like to do is jump in. I just have a couple of updates on the state side. I wanted to let your board know that the Governor Newsom and Health and Human Services Agency Secretary Mark Galley spoke at separate press conferences this past week, talking about a new metric to the COVID-19 indicators to address equity. The governor talked about trying to ensure COVID testing is occurring in diverse communities. And on Thursday, Secretary Galley highlighted the disproportionate impact on the disease on communities of color. 1, cases and deaths are more common among Latinos across all ages cohorts, and 2, deaths are more common among Blacks, particularly among people aged 18 to 34 and 65 and over. And 3, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders also have higher case rates and deaths. He went on to say that the state will be working with each county to look closely at test positivity rates at the community level. The equity metric has not been fully detailed, and more information is expected from the state on that. Governor Newsom also signed a number of bills this past week that affects the pandemic. Governor Newsom signed 3 bills that provide state assistance to small businesses to help with the economic recovery. Assembly Bill 1577 conforms state law to federal law to exclude from gross income the Paycheck Protection Program loans that were forgiven through the Federal CARES Act and subsequent amendments in the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act of 2020. Senate Bill 1447 authorizes $100 million in hiring tax credit program for qualified small businesses. The hiring credit will be equal to $1,000 for each net increase in qualified employees, up to $100,000 for each qualified small business. And also Senate Bill 115 was signed, and that appropriates $561 million in fiscal year 2021 for advanced economic stimulus to jumpstart construction projects. The governor also signed a number of bills, including one that expands and extends COVID-19 supplemental paid sick leave through the end of the year. On another note, the Board of State and Community Corrections took action this past week on $41.7 million in federal coronavirus emergency supplemental funding. and they're distributing those funds in a formula grant to counties through a request for application process, which will require counties to collaborate with the cities, local tribes, and community-based organizations to address COVID-19 impacts. On the federal side, there's been quite a bit of activity, but there have been no bills that have been adopted yet regarding COVID-19 impacts. So there will be more to come on that. So now I want to see if Director Hill can give his quick update, and then we'll jump to an update on the iMask campaign.
Thank you. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ed Hill, Public Health again. Again, I'm going to start off my presentation, as I always do, with the best practices that we can take to make sure that we protect ourselves from the spread of communicable disease like COVID. That is, wash your hands frequently for 20 seconds or more. Don't touch your face with unwashed hands. Stay home if you are sick. Stay hydrated with water, and cover your face with face coverings. As a reminder, it doesn't stop you from getting the disease, but it helps prevent the spread if you're an asymptomatic carrier. Our current numbers for the county, we have 39,689 individuals that have been tested. This no longer includes inmates in that number. We have 273 results pending. We have 2,406 individuals that we are monitoring. Our current total cases for our community is 3,891 since the outbreak began. Unfortunately, 47 deaths. We have a total recovered of 2,691 and an active case count of 1,153. I want to let you know that for some time now, we've had a good inverse relationship between the number of active cases and recovered cases versus the number of new cases. So what I'm getting at is we're recovering more than we're adding. So that's a good number to see. As of yesterday, we have currently 25 individuals hospitalized with 3 in the ICU. 6 of those are Kings County residents. The rest are all from other counties. Our skilled nursing facilities count right now is 172 total cases, 15 active, 133 recovered, and unfortunately 24 deaths. Just a reminder, we work constantly with the California Department of Licensing and Certification, as well as the communicable disease branch with CDPH to ensure that those facilities continue to do what is needed to slow the spread of the disease through the respective agencies. Current total cases at the prisons, 3,062. That's 418 at Corcoran, 2,380 at Avenal State Prison, and 264 at SADF. They've tested 29,829 individuals. They have 667 tests pending. Their active case count is 1,238 with 1,818 recovered and unfortunately 6 deaths. We did see another large spike at Avenal State Prison. It's been a while since I've reported to your board. We are seeing that taper off this week, and we hope to see that trend continue. Again, I reach out to the state every time we see these things occur. I've asked for them to pay close attention to it, make sure that they are ready to support that facility. I also shared some of my frustration, if you recall, when Avenal had its first outbreak. I suggested that they move some type of tent or shelter out there so that they could isolate those inmates. They didn't do that, but they most recently did that at another prison in the state of California, which again increases my frustration why they won't do that at Avenal. We continue to watch hospital data closely. Thankfully, we're seeing a pretty good decrease. I hope that continues. The Porterville Development Center, as the alternate care site, has been closed and is what is known as a warm status, which means it can be stood back up within 72 hours. Right now, they don't have any patients there. They do have some personnel left there that they're cleaning the site, and then once it's cleaned by the 18th of this month, they will completely move out of that facility, unless the need to open it again occurs. The state ordered a disaster medical assistance team by the DOD that was at our hospital. They demobilized last Friday. It was great to have them there while we had them. It was a great resource. And a lot of the work that they did is kind of help the county through that big wave of patients that we saw at that time. So it was sad to see them go, but it was also a great moment to see that they were here to help us through that process. We're currently still maintaining a 60-day supply of PPE, gowns, and 95 masks and gloves for all of our healthcare facilities. And we continue to distribute and respond to medical mutual aid requests from our partners. I'm sorry, I'm scanning because I have a lot on here on testing, but I think I covered all of that during the last presentation. If there's any testing questions, I can get back into them later on, but I'm going to skip the testing for now. Our EPI team has been hired and now has been onboarded, and we're working with the state's EPI team to get them aligned with the new systems and data requirements and processes. We are currently working on getting them the software that they need to be successful, but they've already begun to review our data and our processes and make corrections as we move forward. I just want to once again reemphasize that, this is a good thing. We've never had epidemiologists before, but it also will change some of our numbers as they start to align the data and make it make sense. We've been working hard to launch that program that your board approved, the King's Cares Essential Workforce Support Program, where our essential workforce, specifically our agriculture, food processing, healthcare, anybody that's in the essential workforce, but specifically those high target populations, to support them through quarantine and isolation so that they're not returning to work and not continuing to spread the disease. That was a contract that was executed with KCAO. That program goes live today. We're very happy to hear that. We'll start referring individuals to that program immediately. We did have our follow-up call with the Central Valley Unified Support Team. The meeting was brief, and we simply went over any pending items that we had that we requested, as well as any emerging issues. That's also where they really drove home the fact they want us to accept that other mobile testing resource. Again, I don't know if we can keep 2 mobile sites busy, so we told them to hold off for now. And I'm not sure, since it's been a while since we've updated, but they did come through with our contact tracers. And now we have 25 assigned to us from the state, which is the only reason why I can even lightly offer us as a testing resource moving forward. But that again, as the case changes, so will our demand. A couple weeks ago, the state rolled out a new color code system as presented. There are 4 colors and tiers, with purple being the most restrictive, and we are currently in the purple tier. Even though that they've kept us in the most restrictive tier, they did allow certain business sectors to open. For instance, hair care is now available, although you can't tell, as well as all retail services, including indoor malls, can open to 25% of their capacity. So that is a welcome change. This change also brought on the removal of all the monitoring lists associated data, with the exception of 2 elements, which I went over earlier, but I'll go over them again. And that's the daily new case rate of per 100,000 of the population and the testing positivity rate. They did change the standards. The old standard was no more than 14 cases over a 7-day period per 100,000 population. That is now 7 over a 1-week period. And then the tested positivity rate was always needed to be 8% or less, and they've maintained that one. The county has to meet these standards and maintain them for 2 weeks before we can move into another tier. And even then, they have you wait another week after that. So it's a full 21 days after you've met the standards before you can move to the next tier. As I showed in the slide with the testing presentation, we're currently at 11.3 new cases per 100,000. This is after our adjustment due to the testing requirements, and our tested positivity is 8.8. As Ms. Campbell presented, it is also anticipated that the state's going to announce another metric. So we went from 6 to 2 to 3, and we're going to go to 4 again. And that metric is the equitable distribution of COVID-19 resources. Much like the testing item, if we don't show marked changes in a specific population of interest, they will increase our score by up to 10%. That's the last news that I have on it. It is not finalized. We anticipate it being announced sometime this week, maybe early next week. I am not sure. I'm going to go ahead and pause there, see if there's any questions. I know that was a lot of information very quick.
Any questions or comments, Fred? Anybody here tired of COVID?
You got
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, Supervisor Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got about 3 of them here, so bear with me. The first one, Mr. Chair, I'd like to publicly ask that Mr. Hill release the data to the Board of Supervisors and to the public, data as it relates to, again, hearing that Hispanics are amongst the highest infection rates when it comes to COVID-19. And so for Kings County, I would like that data on not only for Hispanics, but whatever breakdown he has on ethnicities at this point. He's been collecting this since March. We have thousands of cases that have come and gone in the county. Other counties are releasing this data. This is information that I feel is crucial. As a leader in Kings County, it's data that's crucial to me moving forward. I think it's crucial in the Board of Supervisors coming to some kind of common vision as it relates to COVID and helping to keep our community safe as possible as we can at this point in the pandemic. So that is one. The second one is tied into that. Mr. Chair, this is my third request to Mr. Hill publicly here. You've heard me say this 2 times, but I'm also very interested in why women in Kings County have a higher infection rate than men in Kings County. I think that's something that's important, should be important to all of us. And that data right there is something that we absolutely need to know as we move forward as well. So those are the 2 things there. And so I'll pause there. I have one more question after that, but I'll let Ed catch up through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Valley, through the chair. I apologize for that. I meant to bring up the race and ethnicity data that you discussed. In the past, the county has established a standard of using the data de-identified guidelines published by the Department of Healthcare Services to publish all of our data. Supervisor Valley, correct that the other counties are surrounding us do publish that data, but they also have a much higher population. That guideline uses the possibility of using data to re-identify somebody to create a risk score. It includes things such as population, how often things are reported, demographics, location, and we have not been able to reach that number yet, but we are getting very close. In fact, on last review, and I discussed this with Carrie from County Council, we will be beating the threshold for race and ethnicity by the 17th of this month to release that data. So we're very close, and given that our population does have a high Hispanic population, I would recommend and feel that the risk of somebody being re-identified if we release that data now would be relatively low. Look to County Council for any further discussion or just.
No, I would just confirm that County Council has been advising the Public Health Department on what is legally compliant disclosure in line with HIPAA and the California private medical information legislation. And we have been vigilantly aware that Supervisor Valley and other interested parties are interested in that information and that it will be made available at the earliest opportunity in which it is legally allowed.
Well, the follow-up to that then, Council, thank you for that information, is so on or about the 17th, how will you release that, Mr. Hill? Would that be something that you could email to the board members, or would you be going straight to the public website with that data?
I could do both options, but we would be adding it as a regular reported item on our daily items that we already put on our website.
Okay, thank you for that. That satisfies that first part of the question. The second part, as it relates to women.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you brought this up a couple times, and I even made it a point to bring it up at the Unified Support Team meeting, because I also see this happen in Tulare, Kern, and our surrounding counties, and they didn't have an answer, meaning the state agencies didn't have an answer. As mentioned in the past, we have just gotten our epidemiological team on board. We will have that resource as well as we have posed that question to the state. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you yet.
So putting the state aside and with it being your responsibility, as I see it, are you saying you do not have the ability to take the time to look at that data and report back to the board on that topic?
We can tell you, as you know, that we have a variance between men versus women, but the exact cause we don't know. And I hope again that with the EPI team, we would be able to answer that moving forward. But you know, it's difficult because we can only respond to or present as the information is presented to us, meaning if we ask a patient a question, they either answer it or they don't. And that will be very integral into answering that question.
Okay, I'll ask you next week, or please be proactive enough to update us on that topic. And then lastly, Mr. Chair, through you to Ed. Ed, you touched on the KCAO program that's launching. Is that the Harvest to Home that I'm hearing about yesterday?
Thank you, Supervisor Valley, through the chair. That is one component of that program. The contract with KCAO, one of the stipulations of it was that they were to use and leverage not only local, but state and other federal resources as they become available, and they are plugging into that system as well. So that will be managed and run in coordination with that program.
Okay, because the confusion that I got a couple of emails yesterday and some phone calls on the program. And so as I was not obviously on the last agenda item, it sounds like the Harvest to Home is, I don't want to say in opposition, but it goes against what you've reported to us, meaning that those essential workers, the ag workers, meat packing, that those are not the type of workers that you would see a program to house them in hotels as a successful program, much like we've offered for firefighters, deputies, frontline, public safety, where that kind of a program would work under the model of housing them and giving them the ability to distance from their families and not be at risk of bringing an infection home. Am I to understand that right? Just from what I'm hearing, and I'll admit it's third party, Mr. Hill, information I'm getting, that this program is saying that we're offering hotel rooms to farm workers? And if so, did you change your perspective on that type of a model for this population?
Thank you for the questions. You are correct that what we have learned through other processes such as Project Room Key, other isolation programs with the prisons, and with working with the agricultural industry, they do not want to be separated from their families. They do want to stay at home. But we do have the caveat in our program with KCAO, because it makes sense to isolate the family as a whole and quarantine them and support them during that process, unless they have somebody that's over 65 or with chronic medical conditions. And then it would make sense to remove them from the home willingly. It wouldn't be forcefully if they wanted to do so and isolate them in a hotel. Again, I'm not very confident how much that resource will be used, but it's a program that has been pushed hard from the feds and from the state. And again, if we have the option to use those resources and those funds, and then by way of doing so, extending our program, it would be beneficial to our community. Jimmy Hook can also, well, he's probably not on the line, but he's familiar with the Harvest to Home program, the challenges that it had, specifically the things that I've mentioned, that population does not usually want to stay in that hotel. They want to be close to their resources and close to their family. But again, we're integrating it into that program with KCO as a possible opportunity to extend resources if possible, but it's not going to be a requirement.
Yes, well, the reason why it's confusing and an issue possibly, if again the information I'm getting is correct, is that I assume the $2 million that we voted out of CARES funds on July 14th to your department, that we then voted to send that to KCAO for these essential services under your Kings County CARES program, that those fundings there, those monies were to help those types of that population to stay home and in their home, Mr. Hill. So I was satisfied that we as a board that we took care of that countywide. So people who left that meeting yesterday were calling me up now and saying, hey, if we're going to house farm workers, you have no shelter in your district. You do not have hotels in the areas of the highest densities of farm workers. And so those are complaints coming my way now that I'm not even getting a heads up on or was aware of, but it's a complaint that until I got them, I didn't think it was a valid complaint. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, I'm unsure on who's providing you with those complaints. We are pursuing that program, but again, as you'd mentioned, we don't see it being successful. That doesn't mean we're not going to use it when we can to extend those funds for the agriculture industry and the food processing industry. So maybe if we have a call offline or so that you can provide the details of who's complaining so that I can do some research and find out some more details so that I can address them.
Well, I'll wrap up there, Mr. Chair. It is a problem. I don't need a call, but I am going to have something to say on that for the meeting's over under that matter. Thank you.
Good. Any more questions or
Thank you.
comments? Okay, we'll turn it over to Rebecca Campbell. You want to add on to the?
Oh, yep. So I'd like to give the board an update on the iMask campaign. I want to first start off by showing the board some of the product that's been coming out. And then I've invited Mr. Rick Meridian. He is on the line and he would like to give your board an update. So first off, I wanted to mention that world champion boxer Jose Ramirez just had a fight on ESPN. And through our campaign, we were able to have a media spot highlighting some of the work that's being done. So I'd like to go ahead and play that one.
We are inching forward towards our world championship. You know, this has been a year when athletes have taken on roles of activism beyond anything we have seen in the past. But for the world champion we're about to see in moments, Jose Ramirez, it's not just a 2020 thing, it's an every year thing for him. Mark Kriegel, no matter what it is, Ramirez only knows one way, and he has proven it to us for a long time, to serve.
In mid-July, Kings County, California, like much of the state, experienced a huge surge in COVID cases. It was especially hard hit in agricultural areas among agricultural workers. The county had a problem how to convince people who were typically packed two families in a one-bedroom apartment that testing for COVID would not draw ICE, would not get them deported. The problem was, who would people listen to? Who would they trust? Jose Ramirez. Slew of national titles, former Olympian, now a unified champion. Still, Jose Ramirez has something infinitely more precious. An identity. In a sport that celebrates trash talk, he's not much of a provocateur.
What's your goal to become the undisputed world champion?
Nor is he Instagram famous. But amid the urge for athletes to represent, no one's been representing quite like Ramirez.
For your delivering these packages to let them know that we're very thankful as they continue working through this crisis for this COVID-19.
His sympathies and sensibilities formed as a kid, picking bell peppers in California's agricultural heart. Son of immigrants, sport long dominated by them. But the issues of age have curiously conspired in his favor to give him a cause. Which is to say that Jose Ramirez knows exactly what and who he's fighting for. Now, the effort against the surge comes months after Ramirez and his manager, Rick Meridian, organized a huge relief effort for agricultural workers. Meridian is one of these guys who doesn't hear the word no, and he's been so impressive to other fighters in crafting Jose's image that he's recently signed Robert Garcia, Joshua Franco, we saw win a title back in June, and 3 other undefeated fighters from that stable, including Ruben Villa. We'll hear more about him later in the broadcast.
Okay, so then the next video I'd like to show is the commercial that is out that has some of our local leaders and gives our messaging for iMask.
Mask for someone. I have. For our families.
Our family.
For our seniors. Lord, if we get back on the field, so my clients can return to the shop. Together, we can knock out COVID-19.
And then one more thing I'd like to show your board are some of the billboard. We had a number of billboards that are currently up or going up, and I just want to take a moment to highlight those. So there's the first one. Well, I'll go back. I mask for my life and yours. We mask to feed the world. I mask for my teammates. I mask for my son's future. I mask for our seniors. I mask for our veterans. I mask to serve and protect. Okay, so now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Marigan, and he's going to talk about where these videos are playing, where these billboards are up, and all of the other things that have been involved with the campaign.
Thank you, Rebecca. First, I'll address the large piece that aired national on ESPN. On social media, you received millions and millions, literally, of impressions. Though I Mask with Kings County, big and bold, was posted by everyone from Top Rank to other news and media outlets that have upwards of 1 million followers each. ESPN, as you can see, concentrated on it throughout the telecast. What you just saw was one portion of the lead-in, the biographical lead-in on the fight, but on the actual fight, they discussed Kings County and the masking campaign and so forth. So I think we hit a home run with the campaign. We've been, congratulated by numerous people in the media world for how the campaign looks and the feel of it. So even though it was not a contractual mandated thing we had to get done, I just want the board to know that, I got it done and, didn't take no for an answer to the powers that be to get it done. So came out great. Following that, you got another wave of regional press that you can't write a check for with Kings County and national. By the way, ESPN put this out in a number of other national publications. Wonderful Pistachios matched the donation for the gloves that we auctioned off. Supervisor Verboon was on primetime on KMJ with Ray Appleton. They discussed this thing for an hour on that call. Jose, then Doug, then Ray. And he thought you got to talk about a lot of other platforms of what the city's doing. He had a great idea. Now we all know legally that the money will get donated to the county. The board will decide its use. But there were some good ideas brought up for it, i.e. possible purchasing of vaccines. But long story short, we got $20,000 back going to the county for your board to use however they feel fit, from that. And again, tons of news episodes. Fresno Beat did a massive story. It was on social media in the millions when the auction was done. And the press release that went out from Wonderful Pistachios nationally, Kings County was the bold headline in it when it went out. So tremendous PR. I think we got done beyond, what I think anybody would have maybe imagined with it. Then the billboards onto that campaign. So I hope the board likes the billboard campaign. Again, a lot of compliments coming through social media accounts and tags on how it looks and feels. But I have some good news that I didn't share with anyone yet, including Rebecca. So don't get mad, Rebecca. But far past our contractual obligation of October 15th. I managed to secure these boards staying up to December. And I also managed to secure another form of media that I instituted, which was direct mobile marketing to Kings County and Kings County only residents. So that will stay into effect till January 1st. And we've had success with that already. I forwarded the success on just one post early on, one blast, I mean, to Kings County people. It shows, 30,000 messages would go out to the residents there mobile wise. And then it'll show the click-through analytics, meaning they press on it and then they go to the website, and then that lets you know they at least read after they clicked and then went to the website. And there's like 350 people on just the first one, and there's plenty of them that go out. So that was another extension there. There's no additional cost to the county or anything else, but we'll have those boards up through the end of the year basically, and the mobile campaign. The television spot you saw, again, hoped you liked it. I felt it came off good and organic, and just on Comcast alone, there's 5,500 commercials running, I believe, and which just started, I think last week, and that'll run, I believe, through October, the end of October, I believe. And then you have Univision, who is doing the same thing you saw in English, but it's in Spanish. There's a massive campaign the same way there that'll start this week. It'll run for 60 days, I believe. So on the television side, we've got a ton of airtime. That's a lot in the media world to have that many commercials running on those platforms. And again, I hope the board sees that this was molded as not a Jose Ramirez campaign, but a campaign. And that's what I like about it, is everybody that's involved in this overall campaign is having their voice heard. On to the PSAs, which you didn't see. These are 30-second information bites that we put together from everyone. That includes people on your board, the sheriff, everyone that was involved. And basically those informational PSAs, they're all on a nice organized link, as well as this TV commercial for any of the board members to use, send to media outlets that they want, email, post. So if anyone needs that, Rebecca could send you a link to where you could download any of your constituents' PSAs, Jose's, and share and use them freely. One of the best things about those PSAs is I've been able to leverage additional marketing and media time for us by having the large media outlets run those PSAs on a separate campaign and basis, where Univision's running the ones that were made, Comcast is running some, and so they provide additional resources to get free media for messaging with those PSAs. And I just want to let the board know that every step of the way, Rebecca has been involved, as well as a couple of the supervisors, just to eyeball any final images, any final PSAs, basically the creation of anything that goes out. So everyone's kept very abreast to what's going on, with these campaigns, and just again wanted the board to know that. And then one of the other things I want to update everybody on is I additionally secured yesterday, which Rebecca is going to help me today. Any of your board members are invited to do this, but it goes towards the campaign spirit. And that's, I secured 6 radio interviews, 2 sit-down news episodes with Univision that are about 3 minutes each, and then a series of PSAs that would be created for these people. So basically, Rebecca's going to need 2 to 3 people that want to take advantage of these platforms that I leveraged, for radio, TV, news, etc., to be done. And she's going to coordinate that stuff late today amongst your board and group, so that any individual board members can make their voice heard and create an environment where they're getting the same message, but from a lot of different people. And I think that's powerful if you do it that way. So anyone interested in taking advantage of those opportunities that we just got done, let me know. Furthermore, I don't know if the board's aware, but through a couple partners of Jose Ramirez sponsors, I was able to leverage additional N95 masks for the county. I believe they've been shipped to you guys already, 10,000 of them, as well as we should have a few hundred, if not more, mobile broadband units that will allow ag families in the rural areas to connect to the internet free of charge. So their families can get on there and find information they may need for the county and or school or anything else. So those are very expensive items. So through one of the sponsors, again, I leverage that for the county, and those are being shipped and used at the board's discretion, how the board wants and where they want them to go. But I thought it would be good to get something like that done when I saw the opportunity. So just wanted to let you guys know about that. And then, last but not least, and this is open to all the board members again and the board, feel free that if something comes up and one of the supervisors says, hey, I think it would help if Jose Ramirez did something with this small business here, or hey, I had assumed that the testing would be situated by now, but I understand its complexity after sitting on the phone for 3.5 hours with you guys. But when the testing is complete and one of the supervisors wants Ramirez to help draw some attention to a certain site, show up maybe, social distance, but sign stuff and take pictures, feel free that communication line is open to us at any time to help, even though it's not contractual. Just know that it's just a phone call away for us to help on any of these individual items, that you guys feel need some attention or pushing. And then outside of that, I'd love to answer, any questions that anyone may have, things they may want to see coming up, and things of that nature.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. I appreciate your intensity on the subject and your willingness never to say no and keep fighting for us. I would be, I wouldn't be a good supervisor or a good chairman if I didn't recognize Supervisor Valley for his efforts to bring on Jose Ramirez early on with the census fight. And the fact that we got a good response from the census, and in using this same knowledge from the census, getting 15% response over one weekend and using it for Jose Ramirez for the IMAS campaign. So, Richard, I know we have our differences, but this is your baby. You brought it to us. You convinced us. So I think it's going to be a positive campaign. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. This is something we may be reusing for some time, and maybe we utilize it to do the testing too. I don't know, but I thank you for your effort. And Rick, I appreciate you. And Jose, that's awesome that he's able to win and promote our cause. So we're lucky to be able to hook our wagon to his horse and move forward. So thank you.
No problem.
Anything else? Nothing? Okay, very good. Richard, do you want to say anything?
I'm okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, very good.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's time. And Rebecca, I'll speak to you later on anything you need help with. And you guys have a good day.
Okay.
Sounds good, Rick. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Yeah, you done with your presentation?
Yep, that's all I have for your board today.
Move on. Board member comments and reports. Supervisor Valley, you got kicked off for a while, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask this here with no prejudice or nothing other than just a direct responsibility, a sense of responsibility to the public. Again, going back to this situation we're in with COVID in Kings County, dating back to March and halfway through September here, I would like to ask the board, I would like to call for a closed session item next week to bring in the opportunity to have questions answered, and to relay some of comments, not in a public format. I would never do that, but I'd like the closed session under a performance evaluation for our Kings County Public Health Director, Mr. Ed Hill. I'd like to do that as soon as next week. Thank you.
Okay. Council, you got that?
We need a board consensus on that.
Mr. Chair, if we need a consensus, then I would just, again, just humbly say that I believe we owe it to the public as leadership that we feel confident in how this is being handled to date. This is major. Again, I'm not publicly saying I have an issue with Mr. Hill or his performance. I'm saying that I'd like the opportunity for the board to have that private conversation so we could come out of that closed session knowing if we can feel confident in the health and safety of the residents of the County of Kings during this worldwide pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. So we need a second on this if we would like to talk about it.
You don't necessarily need a motion.
You don't need a motion.
Is if there are no objections, then the administration can put it on. But to direct staff out of a board announcement part of the agenda, you would need a consensus of the group.
Oh, I guess the question back is, in what form do we do typical performance evaluations? I mean, you as the head of staff would direct all of that, and I think it's in fairness, that's a standard review of all department head performance and singling out anyone.
Historically at Kings County, the performance reviews have come before the board when there's a particular issue that needs to be discussed.
For a department head.
For a department head.
And in this case, Mr. Chair, I'm saying there is an issue.
And that's your opinion, and I respect that.
Yeah, I would encourage you, Supervisor Valley, your request is on the floor, but to discuss it in any greater depth would be potentially a violation of the Brown Act.
Absolutely.
So hearing no objections, Mr. Chair, I
Either continue it on with his concerns or.
Oh, no, we can't continue on with his concerns in this meeting.
We got that.
Correct.
Amongst our board, we either consider his concerns and discuss them in closed session, as he's asking, or we just let them boil.
Well, no, the question right now is whether they're.
The question is to the board, looking at you.
Very good.
Okay. So either we let him have his concerns or we address them. We need at least 2 more people.
You need all 5. You've got one.
Well, I've expressed, I mean, I've been working closely and have no concerns, so I would not be.
All right. So then what we will put on the agenda next week is an action item regarding whether to take that personnel matter to closed session. We don't have a consensus to put it on the agenda, but if a majority of the board members on an agendized action item choose to put it on for closed session, then it can go on for the following week.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the council, how do you do that though without, we're being respectful and not saying anything publicly? I mean, how do you do that? It's not like a regular agenda item where you could present something in hopes that your views line up with other board members or something they could catch on to. I mean, what's the purpose in doing that? Wouldn't it be that if one of the board members saw that this was a need, that request as a courtesy would be put in closed session? Where's the harm or foul in that?
You have been offered the courtesy and you do not have a consensus. Let me back it up. The board cannot take any action unless you have an agendized item. You have asked in a section of an agenda to agendize an item, which would require board action, and you can't take board action without it first being agendized, unless you have board consensus, right? So the board as a group, all 5 in consensus can say, yes, go ahead and agendize it. You do not have consensus. So then the next step would be, okay, you can do it as an action item where you only need 3 supervisors to put it on the agenda, in which case that action has to be agendized. So all it does is it delays it. We have to take it in 2 bites instead of 1 because you don't have all 5 supervisors agreeing to put it on for closed session next week. It's a procedural technicality, but at the end of the day, you only need 3 supervisors to decide whether it goes on the agenda.
Thank you.
I'm confused. We're not gonna have it on closed session next week because we need a consensus of all 5 board members. But if it's gonna be put on the agenda next week,
As
if
an,
we're gonna be in closed session next week, we can do it with consensus of 5 board members. But if it's gonna be agendized next week, he can put that on the agenda, correct?
no, what will be on the agenda for next week is the opportunity for the board to entertain a motion to agendize it in closed session.
So that's the direction we'll have to go unless we have 5 members that agree today.
Correct.
You good with that? Supervisor Riley?
Yeah, and the formality. Thank you. Now.
Okay. Supervisor Peterson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, a lot of effort continues around COVID. Been on numerous conference calls with HHS Director Dr. Gailey. One was with rural counties. There was, an interest in expressing the challenges that surround rural counties, populations. Much of the matrix that have been developed are challenging for small counties, and so we had an individual call for smaller counties with Dr. Gailey and expressed our opinions on a number of issues. One of the things he shared, which for us it doesn't help much, but the state average requirement for testing really impacts counties, and so the administration had made a determination that they would exempt counties 100,000 or smaller from the state average metric, and obviously there was some frustration that where does the number fall, and how do you determine a small county? But that is what it is. And then the next day, another call where the state is looking at demographic diversity and their testing requirements that are applied to counties. I expressed my frustrations with how we accomplish that, and we're doing our best in our testing efforts, and yet some just refuse to be tested for whatever reason, and I was surprised that Dr. Galley said that they had looked specifically at Kings County and believed that we were meeting the diversity standards for testing, and so that was assuring. We are. He did offer a phone call, but I haven't got a time or a date yet back from them with respect to that comment. But I will continue to follow up on that. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Funes.
Just a couple of meeting in KCO, trying to finalizing some of the issues they have down there, and Jeff's doing a real good job with that. I hope he's just continues to do what he's doing.
Very good. Supervisor Neves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kings Waste and Recycling, we approved a $200,000 study to evaluate operations. Part of it, we outsourced all of the green waste, the blue can recycled items. And so now we're going to look at everything, the green waste, the mixed recyclables, and the organics. And so that study has already started and should be completed by March of next year, 2021. Calviva Public Policy Meeting, enrollment's up to 361,000. Again, the economy and everything else pushes more people to the different healthcare providers, and so the member incentives were also discussed. COVID guidelines have kind of curtailed a lot of those, whether it's the baby showers and some of the well baby clinics. You just can't assemble people like we used to before COVID. And so we're having to come up with a new strategy to be able to do that. Telemedicine has been slowly gaining a little bit more market share. I was kind of surprised because most of the time medical care was kind of said that it wasn't accessible. because of transportation. And yet we offer telemedicine, and yet it's been slow to, become popular. So we continue to work around some of those obstacles. The hot weather and the possible power outages of the Labor Day weekend created some problems for Kings County producers, especially in the poultry industry. Some of the processors were shut down because of COVID, and that meant that a lot of market-ready animals had to wait, and market-ready animals don't wait very good when it's hot. And so as a result, about 40 tons of mortality were disposed of. And we did that very, very efficiently. And I want to thank County Council as well as the Commissioner and the Health Department for working through that. Another little wrinkle is the Cal Recycle has put their nose under the tent, and they want to be able to approve these, and they want a week to approve it. And I told County Council that that's fine. Just give me your address, and we'll deliver about 7 or 8 tons of animal mortality on your front yard, and we'll see if you can hurry that little response up a little bit. So needless to say, we did get our waiver signed. Kings Federal Credit Union, we had several audits going on. All of them turned out very, very clean. Another thing that surprises me with the pandemic and the slowdown with the economy, we anticipated a higher loan default, and we haven't seen that, which is kind of good. So that's another one of those, you scratch your head and try to figure out, people are still making loan payments, they're still getting vehicles and loans and RVs and stuff. And so, but we continue to work through that. Calvans, we continue to face the financial issues, and we continue to meet. Hopefully we'll get those resolved in the next, or have some plans. State Controller's Office met last Friday, September 11th, and the main discussions were Prop 15 and Prop 19 and some of the obstacles that are going to be faced by counties and special districts throughout the state of California. And then I was able to attend the Adventist Health. There were 21 members of that Air Force medical team, that DOT team that was present over at Adventist Health, and give them a good send-off as they were demobilized. And then last night, the Lemoore High School Bond Oversight Committee had a meeting, and we were able to tour the Lemoore High School and seen the finished product. They're working on the adult school, which is just about complete. They have some punch list orders. Swimming pool turned out nice. The original gym has been removed, and that area has been formed up, ready for a cement slab, and then they're going to go back in with a prefab building like we did over here for Human Services. And they anticipate that those classrooms will be ready to occupy by April. So those projects are
Go back to school by then.
Yeah, maybe might even have students on campus by the time they get the classrooms there. So, and everything else is turning out very, very well. Unfortunately, a lot of the architects' estimates were low, and market was high, and so not too many change orders. But like the tennis court, I think they had $125,000 estimate, and it ended up being $365 to add 2 courts, and so just a little under evaluating what that cost, but they got a very good bond rating, and so it'll help out in the end. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on now to board correspondence.
There's a couple of things in correspondence. There's a letter from the Fish and Game notifying your board of the Pacific leatherback sea turtle petition to put them on the endangered species list. Also, there's a letter from the Kings County Historical Society with a building request for the Kings County Historic Grangeville Church and Hall located at 14060 Hackett Street in Hanford. Upcoming meetings, we will add the suicide prevention activities to this section, but we also have the Public Safety Appreciation Lunch on September 25th.
Oh, that's been changed.
Oh, it has?
Yes, it's been changed to October.
To October. Okay, we'll look that up. get that updated. Thank you. Upcoming agenda items, we'll have the COVID-19 update. We'll have a couple of donation request items, as mentioned in the meeting before. We'll have from fire and acceptance for the 2020 Emergency Management Performance Grant, COVID-19 supplemental funding. We'll also have from probation a Kingsview for treatment services agreement. We'll have an updated agreement coming from Public Works for the Prop 68 grant for parks. From Public Works, there'll be also a integrated regional water management disadvantaged community involvement program item coming before your board. They will also bring an easement to PG&E for the new service at the new Hickey well. And from Human Resources, there'll be an item for a temporary approval for Personal Appeals Board temporary consensus member. And that's it. Thank you.
The Public Safety Appreciation Luncheon has been moved to October 23rd.
Thank you.
It's still going to be virtual or?
Still going to be virtual. It will be held at the Civic, but it will be online.
Okay. Okay, this meeting will be adjourned and we'll see you next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Thank you.